Okay. Okay, we'll start. Okay, I call this meeting to order. The FORA Reuse Authority Board of Directors special meeting. It's Friday, 2 o'clock, June 21st. If we can have roll call, please.
City of Carmel by the Sea, Mayor Burnett. City of Delray Oaks, Chair Edelin.
Here.
City of Marina, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell.
Here.
City of Marina, Councilmember Morton.
Here.
City of Monterey, Councilmember Selfridge.
Here.
Monterey County Supervisor Potter. Monterey County Supervisor Salinas.
Here.
Monterey County Supervisor Parker. City of Pacific Grove, Mayor Camp.
Here.
City of Salinas, Mayor Gunter.
Here.
City of Sand City, Mayor Pendergrass.
Here.
City of Seaside, Mayor Rubio.
Here.
City of Seaside, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby. 20th Congressional District, Congressman Farr. 17th State Senate District, Senator Monning. 29th State Assembly District, Assemblymember Stone. University of California, Graham Bice. California State University, Eduardo Ochoa. Monterey Peninsula College, Walter Tribley. Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, Marilyn Shepard. Monterey Salinas Transit, Hunter Harvath. Transportation Agency of Monterey County, Debbie Hale. United States Army, Colonel Clark. Fort Ord BRAC Office, Bill Collins. Marina Coast Water District, Director Moore. Chair Edelin, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Lena. Next on the item, we have a legislative session presentations by our elected officials. First up is Senator Bill Monning, 17th State Senate District. Senator Monning has been long active in the Monterey Bay region. He served as a member of the Monterey County Court-Directed Mediation Panel, a professor at the Monterey College of Law, and a professor of international negotiation and conflict resolution at the Monterey Institute of International Studies. In November 2008, Senator Monning was elected to represent the 27th State Assembly District and re-elected in November 2010. Senator Monning is taking an active leadership role in issues related to Fort Ord, most notably his FORA extension legislation and several legislative and budgetary efforts to facilitate funding for the California Central Coast Veteran Cemetery. Sir, we really appreciate all your efforts on behalf of the veterans and on behalf of FORA, and thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Mr.
Sir.
Chair and members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think I'm in the vanguard with my colleagues. We were just out at a event that was recognizing the cooperation to bring down the San Clemente Dam with public-private partnership, and I know Congressman Farr and Assemblymember Stone are probably en route, so they'll be joining shortly. It's indeed my pleasure and honor to provide a current update on where we are with a couple of elements related to the Veterans Cemetery funding. Before I give those specifics, we've just come off delivering our third year in a row on-time budget. The first time since I've been in Sacramento that on-time budget has not been based exclusively on cuts. With working with the governor's January proposal and a May revise, both houses reached agreement using the governor's and Department of Finance projected revenues, which were more conservative than that of the Legislative Analyst Office. Without getting into all the details, I think what affects our area of import, about a $97.7 billion budget with $1.1 billion in reserve, and approximately 50% of that will be going to K through 12 and higher education, and that's the good news. It is restoration funding from past cuts, so it's not on top of that restoration, but our schools, I think, are the appropriate big winners in the success of this budget and the economic recovery of this state, also supported by the passage by voters of Proposition 30, which gives us the breathing space to do some of these restorations. The other areas of restoration in Health and Human Services, adult Denti-Cal, which in our areas, by denying eligible adults access to dental care, has actually filled our emergency rooms and probably cost our state more than what will be saved by this restoration. There's some other areas of important restorations. The court system, our court system in Monterey County has been particularly impacted by cuts. The courts were restored statewide with $63 million. Our budget in the legislature had recommended a $100 million restoration. In negotiations with the governor, that was limited to $63 million. So not quite what we aspired for, but still better than the alternative. Been in regular contact with our presiding judge here in Monterey County and the Monterey County courts. The FORA work has been almost exclusively this session on two avenues to securing support for the Veterans Cemetery. As you know, under Department of Finance and Department of Veterans Affairs, CalVet, we are required to raise $1.5 million in the endowment fund before August 15th to trigger the federal contribution of over $11 million for construction of the first phase of the Veterans Cemetery. The Foundation's fundraising efforts, while stellar, fell short of that $1.5 million, and we were able to include in this budget a $1.5 million line item that will be directed to that endowment fund. It has cleared both houses of the legislature. It is part of the larger budget package that the governor is currently reviewing. So I just want to be real clear that while we're in the pipeline and we think things look good, until the governor signs the budget, we won't know for certain. But assuming everything goes according to plan, that will be part of the 13-14 budget. It will be an allocation of $1.5 million to the Veterans Endowment Fund and will provide the resources necessary combined with a foundation contribution of approximately $200,000 for operations and maintenance. That combined package should be sufficient to perfect the application to the federal government for approval of the Veterans Cemetery project. So that's the path we're pursuing. Related to that is a piece of legislation, SB 106, which I am authoring, that provides some language from Department of Finance and Department of Veterans Affairs to protect any investor's contribution to that endowment fund, the foundation, and the state allocation in the event the federal government were to deny the project. Anyone who's contributed to that endowment fund would be entitled to receive reimbursement of what they've deposited there. So this is kind of insurance language. We need this combined with the budget line to both be approved by the governor. All indications are we're on a clear path. We've cleared SB 106 off the assembly floor with a 78-0 vote last week, and it will be heard in the Senate on Monday at noon. And with a positive vote in the Senate, it would move to the governor's desk to be considered along with the budget line items. So I think that's the current update. I just want to acknowledge the tremendous teamwork of so many from our Monterey County area, and particularly the Veterans Foundation for their efforts and perseverance to move this dream to reality. And while this is an important, I think, landmark as we move forward, we're going to continue to have work to do and continue to do continued fundraising to supplement what the state and the foundation have already committed, or hopefully the state will commit with the governor's signature next week. So I'd be glad to answer any questions, but that's kind of the current status. I was hoping we would be able to report that we've got it, but hopefully next week.
Again, thank you, sir. And when the Veterans Cemetery becomes a reality, it will be there through large part through your efforts and the hard work you've done. We appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, but it's clearly been a team effort. I've been honored and privileged to be a voice for not just the veterans community, but the broader region, the region I represent, San Luis Obispo County, Santa Cruz County, Southern Santa Clara County, Monterey County. All of that region, including San Benito County, will be served by the Veterans Cemetery. So there's over 100,000 veterans families who stand to benefit from this development. So thank you.
Thanks. Any questions or comments by members of the board? Seeing none, out to the public. Any questions by members of the public? Jack.
Just a little bit of levity. You always appreciate that. My name is Jack Stewart. I represent the United Veterans Council and the Citizens Advisory Committee for the County of Monterey on the Veterans Cemetery. It was with great gratitude that the veterans community received the communications from Senator Monning. That was a massive step forward. They will be glad to see him take a break from the community, from the senator's office up there, because he has been dogging them day and night. And like he said, this is a team effort from the veterans community, but it is also a commitment by our state legislator, Senator Monning, that got this done on the veterans budget issue, and we're very appreciative of it. You took a step forward when a lot of other people dared not to, for political reasons. You took that step forward, and we appreciate it. I just hope that everyone realizes that it's okay to be patriotic at times. It's very important to be patriotic at times. And with that, I won't bore you any longer. Senator Monning, thank you so very much from the veterans community.
Thank you, Jack,
Thank you,
and again, all the veterans. I also, just before wrapping up, Mr. Chair, this has been a product of teamwork. I want to acknowledge Nicole Charles, who's been my point person here in Monterey County, who has really worked hard, Kathy Smith in our Sacramento office. I also want to acknowledge Sam Farr. He's been our critical link at the federal level, and his staff, Sonia and Alec here in the district, and Mark Stone and Luis Alejo have both been very supportive, as have John Laird and Ana Caballero in their cabinet positions. So this has been a regional effort, and I just want to acknowledge no one person has moved this forward. It's been a team effort. So thank you.
Thanks again, sir. Any other members of the public?
Good afternoon. I'm Candace Ingram, and today I'm here representing the Central Coast Veterans Cemetery Foundation. It's a combination of summer. We do fortunately have one of our board members here who just asked me to please give this thanks. It's a combination of work, and it's a combination of health issues of some of our board members, that all of our board members are not here today. So, on behalf of the foundation, we're here to say thank you. Thank you to Senator Monning, who has provided the focused leadership that's been needed for so long in this effort to create a veterans cemetery at the former Fort Ord. Senator Monning's hard work with the various state departments, his efforts to achieve the placement of the $1.5 million in the state budget advances the application for the veterans cemetery, and it's truly a major advance in what's been an ongoing 20-year process seeking to honor those who serve and have served our nation. Also, a thank you to Congressman Sam Farr, who has consistently assisted and supported this effort at the federal level to assure that the funding allocation has remained in the federal budget, and it hasn't been an easy process, but we're very grateful for his leadership in this effort. Also, a thank you to Assemblyman Stone, who's provided support and efforts on the assembly side of the legislature to accomplish the steps required for legislative action to move this process forward. And a thank you to each of you on the FORA board for your ongoing and unwavering support to achieve a place of honor, respect, and recognition for veterans throughout the state and the Central Coast region. And to the City of Seaside, the county, FORA, and the United States Army for designation of the land. Thank you also to the unsung heroes who are the staff behind each of the congressman, the senator, the assemblyman, FORA, and others who have assisted in getting this work accomplished. Also, thank you to the media, because they've provided information about the cemetery efforts to the entire community, and information is vital to understanding the issues and the perspectives. And last, but not least by any means, we want to thank the community. Their support and their efforts in this process are invaluable. We've come a long way in this journey to create a lasting tribute to those who serve and have served on behalf of each and every one of us in this room. We recognize that the Cemetery Foundation and the community still have work ahead to assure construction and to raise additional funds required. We can and will succeed by continuing to work together. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Schaefer, a member of the Cemetery Foundation Board, and I want to echo Candy's remarks and thank Senator Monning for really taking the lead and rallying his colleagues, Assemblyman Stone and Congressman Farr, in this effort, in addition to the board members and various other officials who have supported this effort. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Falkenberg. I'm a Marina resident, but today I'm here. I do a lot of volunteer work over the last 10 years with the American Legion Auxiliary. I'm currently District 28 President-elect for 2013-2014, and a lot of what we do is support our veterans, their families, their descendants, and having this cemetery here in our area will make the lives of so many survivors of veterans so much easier, so that they don't have to travel hours and hours to visit their loved ones. And on behalf of the over 1,200 auxiliary members here in Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties, I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much from the bottoms of our hearts.
Thank you, ma'am.
Name's Eric Peterson on behalf of Monterey County Green Party. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public? Okay, back to the board. Any final members by members of the board? Okay, seeing none. Next on the agenda, Assembly Member Mark Stone, the 29th State Assembly District. Assembly Member Stone began his career as a trustee and later board president of the Scotts Valley Unified School District. He continued his public service with 2 terms on the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors and served as the 2011 Vice Chair of the California Coastal Commission. In November 2012, Assemblymember Stone was elected to represent the 29th State Assembly District and assumed a position on the FORA Board of Directors. In his short time on the board, Assemblymember Stone has worked hard in hand with Senator Monning and Congressman Farr on the cemetery, economic recovery, and habitat conservation issues. Sir, we do appreciate all the work you've done on those behalf. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here today with my long tenure in the legislature now of about 6 months. It's been an interesting process and a great learning experience for me. I'm pleased. As with anything through the legislature, it really takes both houses in a cooperation with the executive branch in order to pull anything off. And as we still wait for the governor to sign the budget and work through some of the final details, I am pleased that under Senator Monning's leadership in the legislature to get the money for the cemetery proposed in the Senate, then working on the Assembly side, ensuring that as the budget went through conference committee, that the committee members on both houses understood what the issue was, didn't have a problem with that. I've spent some time with the Speaker and understand as well that the Speaker of the Assembly, part of his budget proposal or his priorities was a number of areas helping veterans homes in California, as well as helping to put some resources to ensure that veterans benefits are being paid appropriately. So with the money that was set aside for the cemetery plus the other initiatives, I think there were $4 to $5 million in the budget to assist veterans out of the state of California. So we had some significant benefits for our veterans, for the folks who have been here. And then being able to underscore to my colleagues in the Assembly the benefits of not just the cemetery here, but the historical significance of it because of the military history of Monterey. The placement here was something that I think all members of the legislature could see was of tremendous benefit statewide, not just for the region. And that was a significant part of being able to put a package like that together and get it sold. I think probably the only another significant bill that I was working on that deals with this area, working with the local transit agency and trying to make sure that we can deal with some traffic considerations and have a bus bypass option for the transit agency. That is something that I've been working through the Assembly and with Senator Monning's help through the Senate to give Monterey Salinas Transit the opportunity to look at options for being able to get buses through traffic more readily. That's another piece of legislation that's moving through that not directly related to Fort Ord, but certainly to people who are coming and going from Fort Ord and commuters in this area. If the transit agency is able to do its traffic studies and make sure that it's able to move buses through, should be significant savings for people and hopefully attract more people to be riding transit here in the Monterey Peninsula area.
Thank you, sir. Any members of the board have any questions or comments of Assemblymember Stone? Seeing none, out to the public. Any members of the public have any comments, questions? Okay, back to the board. Thank you very much, sir. Again, we appreciate all the work you've done on behalf of this board. It's been very, very helpful. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay, last, but definitely not least, is Congressman Sam Farr of the 20th Congressional District, a fifth-generation Californian who was raised in Carmel. Congressman Sam Farr has served the Central Coast for 6 years as a Monterey County Supervisor, 12 years as a State Assembly member, and for the last 20 years as Congressman. I guess he was elected when he was about 18 years old, all those years. He doesn't look a day over that. The FORA was slated for closure in 1991, 2 years before Sam Farr came to Congress. He spent much of his tenure in Congress helping our community manage and recover from the closure of Fort Ord. Congressman Farr facilitated the final legislation that conveyed the base's land to civilian hands at no payment to the Army, and has steadfastly secured funds for munitions removal, habitat conservation, water resources, and economic recovery. He was a driving force behind the establishment of the National Monument on Fort Ord and the joint DoD Veterans Clinic, and continues to be a powerful advocate for the California Central Coast Veterans Cemetery. As an aside, our FORA delegation went to Washington, D.C. Last week, and we met with various offices trying to get the cemetery moving forward. We thought we hit a roadblock until we went to Sam Farr's office, and one of his staffers went to the same office after we did. And I guess the comment that came back was they'd never been talked like his staffer went in there. He was able to accomplish with his staff what our delegation wasn't, and that's just indicative of the amount of work he's done on behalf of the Veteran Cemetery for in this county. Sir, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the visit to my office. Thank you all for your service on this great regional body. I can't believe it's been 20 years since we've established FORA. And since I've been, was first elected 20 years ago this month. I think I'm just going to be very, very brief. We're so close to the cemetery getting funded, it's scary. We're just awaiting the governor's signature, then the filing of the application, and as was stated, when that application lands in Washington, we're going to fast track it through the process. It's been a team effort, and the state team has been phenomenal at getting. I think what frankly kind of slowed down the state's attention in this. That I've been on the MilCon Veterans Appropriations Committee, and if you all recall, some of you old timers that were here in the early days when we first proposed this being a federal cemetery, we kept getting the pushback from the Federal Veterans Administration that they don't do new cemeteries until they've filled up all their old cemeteries, and they still have one. They have several in California, one in near us, within 70 miles, and therefore had no interest. We never listened to them because we just thought, well, we can break that. We'll get an exception to the rule, and I kept trying. At the same time, we pursued Plan B, which was what the state said. The feds kept saying, look, if we won't do this, you can do it as a state. And there was pushback by governors, regardless of party. Every assembly member and senator before these wonderful servants tried. And what I realized finally was that the Department of Veterans Affairs at the state level just never took any interest in it. And we invented this third way, which is if you can't do it by Plan B, Plan A, Plan B, let's come up with the local community raising the money and sort of setting it aside for the state and then the state applying for it. But it required the state do something. And the state hadn't paid any interest in it. They didn't work on getting the legislation passed and writing it or helping write it. And where we've come to now, and thank God your legislation's in there, Senator Monning, to clean it up, the State Department of Veterans Affairs just didn't help us at all. They didn't want to be in the state cemetery business, even if we were doing all the work. And I tried to point out to him and to the governor, and should have done this long ago, is look, California, the federal government spends $10 billion on veterans in this state, $10 billion. And that doesn't even include the money amount we spent at the state hospital, the Veterans Hospital in Palo Alto. And we have another Veterans Hospital in Southern California. What is the value to having the state-of-the-art, one of the greatest hospitals in the world on traumatic brain injury, run by the federal government in Palo Alto next to Stanford Medical School? There's got to be some value to the state for that. And all the employees who are making damn good salaries to the state and spending those salaries in California, what it is the $10 billion that comes to veterans, they're spending that money in the community, and we just up the burial fee so you can actually, recoup the cost. And state of California, what's the value to all your community colleges, state colleges, and university for Congress upping the GI Bill and giving access not only to the veterans but to their family members? How many more people have enrolled in higher education because of that? And that's full-paying students. And I think we've finally been able, and Bill and Mark have been able to remind some folks in Sacramento that, look, it's time that the state of California stand up for veterans rather than just sort of delegating it to each county and having county veterans officers, and stand up for veterans in the sense that it's more than just rest homes. Yes, we do a good job with the soldier homes, and they're building new ones, but it's not just the living, it's also the dead. And it's time for the state to stand up. And I think that they've, although they're not willing to be 100% state-funded cemetery, they are realizing that they have a professional, responsible role. And I think they're in turnaround and why you're having a different attitude. Now we still have to get the State Public Works Board to agree to it, and they have to file their application by August 15th. And if we have that application, and we're doing trying to answer every pre-question that they might have, so that we can fast track it when it arrives in Washington. But I think we're the right momentum's going, and frankly, FORA has really stood up to being a responsible entity, and I'd like to thank you for that, because we wouldn't all be here today, sort of complimentary of the fact that we're farther along than we've ever been before. The Veterans Clinic, it's going to get built. They just keep telling me groundbreakings next month. I think in reality, the contractor should be selected in the next 2 months. Then groundbreaking sometime early next year. What this is the first time ever in the history of either DOD or Department of Veterans Affairs, two different entities, two different secretariats, that have come together and say, let's design a building that's made for the patient rather than the uniform, and designing it so that it'll operate that way. So it would essentially be a clinic where you could walk in. It doesn't matter whether you walk in a uniform or you walk in as a civilian veteran. You're going to be taken care of as a patient in a one-stop fashion, and all the complicated billing and hierarchy of how that all runs has got to be worked out between the two departments. So the building, for the first time anywhere in the United States, is being designed with that concept in mind. It's a no-brainer for most of us. It's the common sense way of doing it. It's going to cut the cost of services and improve the extent of services. So it'll be the first time that we've ever had this collaboration in one building. And you're to take credit for that, too. BRAC funding, Congress is in a mood of cut, squeeze, and trim. We can't even agree how much we're going to cut, squeeze, and trim, so we wrote it into law, and it just operates by statute. It's called sequestration. It means across-the-board cuts, no exceptions, although Congress did make an exception for the Department of Defense when they said we couldn't live with it, so they gave them $20 billion more. And they're taking that money out of poor people. And we can't get the votes to do that, so we're just stuck. But the one area that we did get funded, we got $451.3 million for the cleanup of bases. That's for the whole country. It's a pittance when you look at what all the remaining sites have to be cleaned up. But it is, in the era of sequestration, it's a solid figure and it's holding. So I think we won't have to worry about continuing the rest of our cleanup here. And then lastly, I authored language last year that suggested that the Monterey model, what the Monterey model is, that Monterey, we made it a pilot program, was able to contract with the Army and the Navy to do what they call base operations, to do the public works of both DLI and the Naval Postgraduate School. And it's taken a long time to get everything in order, but Monterey's doing that at a savings to, I don't know what it is combined, but in the Army at one time it was about $2.5 million. It's been such a successful model that we got language in the Defense Authorization Bill last year making the Monterey model nationwide. And so again, your actions out here and working with the military bases through the Monterey model is going to become a national example. I'm proud to represent you in Washington. I'm proud to work with you, and hopefully this next year, all this complaints about what does all this master plan mean, and what are you doing to really fulfill these things like cemeteries and clinics and the actions where federal government has to be a full partner, doing it on the monument side of designation. But I think we're going to see the construction beginning and promises coming true, and I want to thank you for your help in getting it done.
Thank you, sir. Any questions by members of the board or comments? Saying none out to the public, any comments by members of the public?
These aren't notes. My name is Jack Stewart. I spoke previously regarding Senator Monning, and it's my distinct pleasure to thank my Congressman, Sam Farr, for doing all he has done since he came into office. I was working for the County of Monterey when he came on board as the congressman, and we met and we discussed certain issues. One was the cemetery, one was the VA clinic. The VA clinic happened within 18 months after our discussion. James Goff, the director of the Medical Center at Palo Alto, Sam Farr and I met, and we got it done. It was a very, very good team effort at that time. We had the very first home-based clinic for the VA in the state of California, following the closure of Fort Ord. It was so important for the veterans community at that time. But we couldn't forget one thing. So shortly after the closure, Silas B. Hayes Army Hospital closed down. And the active duty military basically had nowhere to go except a small clinic on the Presidio of Monterey, which was overwhelmed. Therefore, most of the active duty members had to go on TRICARE, standard or prime, one of the two. The veterans community is just not about veterans. It's about our brothers and sisters on active duty also. We thought right away we need something to accommodate both DOD and veterans in this county. And that started it with Congressman Farr. It's taken a little bit longer because there was a lot of reluctance from the DOD side. Not a bit of reluctance from the VA side, but the DOD side was reluctant. I think it was a matter of posturing at times, to be honest with you. But that's just about ready to happen also. As Congressman Farr stated, we had our trials and tribulations on the Veteran Cemetery. Not just a few, a whole bunch. But one thing that stood out in my mind since I've been on this project for the entire piece, for the entire way, which was when Sam came on board. Perseverance. It was there. We was determined to see it happen and to leave a legacy that would be always in place at the former Fort Ord to honor our veterans that came out of Fort Ord and anywhere in the country for that matter, and to honor the dependents and families of those veterans, to allow them, as stated before, a short trip to the cemetery to visit their loved ones. That was very important. And I've never met a person so hard-headed in my life. He just would not relinquish the idea of getting this veteran cemetery done. I mean, he changed laws. He twisted arms up at the federal level. I don't doubt that he may have said a few unkind words to people up there. But he always is a team player. He gets people together and say, let's get it done. We're not leaving this room until we get it done. And that's the attitude of my congressman, Sam Farr. And I applaud you, Mr. Congressman.
Thank you, sir. Well stated.
Good afternoon again, Bob Schaefer. I'm also a member of the Fort Ord Alumni Association Board, and I want to thank Sam and his staffer, Alec Arago, for working with the Fort Ord Alumni Association to establish military history exhibits in the new clinic building. The VA have been very, very cooperative about this. They're fully on board with the program to have ongoing displays, not only in the lobby, but in the treatment, in the waiting rooms and hallway. So again, thanks again, Sam and Alec.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Safwat Malik, and I sit here in awe of three people, three giants. We are so fortunate that we are represented by the best of the best, Congressman Farr, Senator Manning, and Assemblyman Stone. We could not have asked for better representation of the people, by the people, with the people being the forefront of your goal and target rather than special interest group. And that is very rare to have three people sitting in here acting the same way in the same manner. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Levon Stone. I'm the Executive Director of the Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network. And we also represent part of the community that's not here today, and those of color. I honor you, Congressman Farr and Assemblyman Manning, and all of what you've done and what you are doing. But I have to say, and I am so very happy to see what is happening with the cemetery. It's been a long, hard journey, and as a wife of a veteran and also speaking out on this issue, I am very, very glad to see where we are right now, especially to honor our veterans. But I have to say that in order to really honor our veterans, now we have to look at, and I hope we can proceed and look at what is happening to our veterans and their families economically here on this peninsula. Because this is 20 years now, and we are still looking at some very, very devastating situations with jobs and with housing that is affordable. We know what is happening in Washington. We know what is happening to the budget, especially at the federal level, and it is not meeting the needs of not only our veterans, but the local community here on the Monterey Peninsula. And I hope now that we can work together as a community to solve this problem, the same as trying to work on the Veterans Cemetery. We need to work on the participation of the community on how we are going to have employment, sustainable employment for the people who lost everything when Fort Ord closed down, and to develop businesses. We can't do it without the community's input. We can bring in all kinds of things, but if it's not what the community needs, and if it's not going to meet the needs of the community, then we're going to still be standing here 20 years from now again. So I just encourage you to please, let's concentrate. The cleanup of Fort Ord was supposed to be cleaning it up, then turning it over for economic recovery to the people and to the community here. And that has not happened. Now we're looking at thousands and thousands of acres of open space, which does not give us any kind of developments, and nobody has talked about how we're going to meet the needs of our community, of our veterans, of their families economically. They're still alive. The cemetery, and we know we need it, is going to be there when they're not alive anymore, but they're alive right now. So I just encourage you to please look at the situation that we're facing, and please to work with us on solving this problem. It's not getting any better right now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Edith Johnson, former supervisor, former mayor of Marina, former school board member, and lots of years in politics, lots of years on this board, and know many, many people on this board and in this room. And I'm very, very pleased to be here today to thank the three esteemed colleagues who are working on this project. You are working together as a partnership, and I really, really have to take my hat off for that kind of effort, because that's what it takes. And I am so glad at the stage that we're at, because it's really quite successful right now. But let's keep it moving, because this is only the first step. The columbarium that would be the result of all of this is just a first stage effort, and it still requires a lot of help and endurance and people to work together. And that's what I would recommend that we do, that we keep in contact and keep that close coordination, because it has been a 20-year project. And right now I represent veterans' families on the Fort Ord Veterans Advisory Board and on the County Advisory Commission. And so I have, just because I've left office doesn't mean I've stopped doing the kinds of things that are important to give back to our community, to keep our community strong. And that's where we're coming from. So let's keep the cooperation going, and thank you so very much on behalf of the community.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other members of the public? Going once? Okay. Congressman, again, thank you very much for your tireless efforts on behalf of the FORA board. I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind here that if you were not involved and your office was not involved, this could be dragging on for another 20 years, and that does not suit our veterans or serve our veterans at all. And on behalf of the board, I would like to thank the three of you gentlemen who take time out of your busy schedules to come down here to brief us on updates. And again, thank you for your continuing support. And if there's anything we can do to support you also, please let us know in the future. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is we'll be going into closed session. Closed session will be about conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, government code 54956.9 alpha, 5 cases. First one, Keep Florida Wild versus the Florida Reuse Authority, case numbers M114961, M116438, M119217. Next would be Bogan versus Hulamard, case number M122980. Next, the City of Marina versus Florida Reuse Authority, case number M118566. And last, a Public Employee Performance Evaluation Executive Officer as per Government Code 54957. Prior to going into a closed session, does any member of the public wish to address the board on any of these items that we'll be discussing in closed session? Saying none, then we are adjourned. We'll be reconvening in closed session right next door. Thank you very much. Okay, I call the meeting to order again. We're back in open session. Our attorney counsel, Mr. John Giffen, will announce the actions taken in closed session.
Yes, the board met in closed session and heard from counsel on the items on the agenda. The board considered the recommendations, and there is nothing to report out.
Okay, thank you very much. Is Mr. Darren McBain here? Okay, I don't see him. Okay. No. I'll tell you what. Tom, would you be so good as to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I know. It didn't show. Okay, a couple of announcements. First of all, you should have in front of you the 2013 Fort Ord Prescribed Burn Notice for information. Read it. Tells you what's going on with regard to the burns at Fort Ord. Yeah, burn season starts July 1. Next, we have a letter from the Monterey Santa Cruz County's Building and Construction Trades Council CEO, Mr. Ron Cheshire, asking that we consider having our staff prepare and deliver a presentation with regard to prevailing wages. It will happen, and the next executive committee meeting will schedule a time for that. Ron, thank you very much for a very constructive suggestion about that. Don't have a heart attack there. Okay, next, I just want to report my first delegation on a lobbying trip I've been in office now for about 15 years. I made my first delegation in Washington, D.C. to kiss the ring of our federal government. And our FORA delegation was there, and actually A lot of these things you hear are boondoggles or whatever else. This is no boondoggle. It was a lot of hard work, and we got a lot accomplished. I was really surprised at how much work was really done. We went to various governmental offices and the Association of Defense Communities National Summit in D.C. We had over 500 people at the ADC Summit from all over the country. Our delegation made lobbying visits to the Department of the Interior, Veterans Affairs, Housing and Urban Development, Office of Economic Adjustment, BRAC, and Congressman Sam Farr's office. It was very valuable. The trip certainly resulted in water being transferred from the Army to FORA for the future of Veterans Clinic, and possible additional funding for planning funds for FORA itself. Now, these agencies can't come out and say, we promise you we're going to do this, but you're looking at the relationship that our executive officer and the other members, the senior members of our delegation have established with these Washington personnel, and the goodwill is there for the most part. A couple of universal themes. First, the Photo Abuse Authority is a highly respected organization. The FORA land transfer was the largest federal land transfer of its type in U.S. history. Prior efforts by FORA staff and prior elected officials have been on these trips that were so successful that any time I'd walk around and we're all wearing name tags, people would come up and they didn't know me from Hill of Beans, but they saw FORA and engendered instant respect. This organization has national respect across the country. We may have some issues now and then, but across the country, the reputation this organization has is phenomenal. You can all be very proud about being part of this organization. I had no idea what it was, just how respectful it was. Second, Michael Hulamart, our executive director, is one of the most respected members of the Association of Defense Communities. He participated in at least 3 to 4 discussions, presentations, round robins, you name it. And his name was mentioned. If I had a beer, every time his name was mentioned or something, I might have a hard time standing up over a long period of time. Again, great reputation, and we're very fortunate to have him as executive officer of this organization. And last, Mr. Fred Muir, the city manager of Monterey, received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Association of Defense Communities organization for his groundbreaking work, and it really was groundbreaking, at the national level on public-private partnerships. Fred not only has done an excellent job for Monterey and the Monterey Peninsula, he's also nationally recognized. Fred, many, many years ago, saw the value of establishing partnerships between cities and the local communities, trying to save money for the most part. He established it with Monterey and encouraged it across the country, and this has really been picked up by ADC. And I knew Fred was good, but I had no idea when Fred walked around, and you got 500 people walking around talking to Fred. Very, very impressive. So again, I wanted to laud Fred Muir for that, and he did a great job. Okay, next, would Mr. Ron Sissom come forward? Ron is from EMC Planning, is requested to address the board with regarding item number 6A and 6A. We're looking at the American Planning Association Best Practices Award of Merit. Ron, take it away, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted just to say a few words and acknowledge a few people about the award that was just mentioned. Again, I'm Ron Sissom. I work with EMC Planning Group. We were consultants to FORA to prepare the base reuse plan reassessment. And there was a large team of people who participated in it, and I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge some people and talk about the award a little bit. I think the first acknowledgement needs to go to the FORA board. There was a lot involved with this, and I think a lot of people were encouraged that the FORA board really made an effort to make this process inclusive, to create a robust public outreach process and get input from a lot of different interests, which was pretty fundamental to making this process work. So acknowledgement to the FORA board for that and its support in the process in general. Obviously, FORA staff was fantastic. Michael and Jonathan, and I don't know, I haven't seen Steve Ensley here, and Darren, I think, just walked in. Great collaboration with our team, great effort. Most of this couldn't happen without their thoughts and insight and strategic inputs, to the reassessment process. So big thanks to FORA staff and our team members, as well as EMC Planning Group, and a couple are here, Candy Ingram from the Ingram Group and Aaron from Denise Duffy, and especially Economic and Planning Systems, who I'm sure many of you know, who does other work for FORA in terms of putting the market study together for the reassessment process. But I think what I wanted to, just for a moment, chat briefly or read an excerpt from the American Planning Association about what this award is about. Let me quote from their materials. It says, the Best Practices Award is for a specific planning tool, practice, program, project, or process that is a significant advancement to specific elements of planning. This category emphasizes results and demonstrates how innovative and state-of-the-art planning methods and practices helped to implement a plan. So that's really what this award is about. And again, hats off to FORA and the team that worked on it to help make this happen and to receive this acknowledgement. I think it's just a testament that the report is meaningful and will be, or is hopefully, a great springboard for the FORA board to continue looking at the base reuse plan going forward. Of course, we're, as EMC, as this team, is certainly ready to help continue to support the board in that process. So with that, I just wanted to bring the certificate, Chairman, if I may present it to you. Hopefully it'll hang somewhere appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Ron, I really appreciate it on behalf of the FORA board. Okay, many FORA and EMC staff members contributed to the success of the reassessment process, but none more so than FORA planner Darren McBain. Darren worked tirelessly over the last year to see the reassessment process through to completion, has since proved a valuable resource to the PRAC in their consideration of post-reassessment policy options. This will be Mr. McBain's last board meeting with FORA as he's accepted a position with the Monterey County Local Agency Formation Commission. On behalf of FORA, I would like to convey our gratitude and your dedication and your hard work. That said, this award is not just an award for FORA or for EMC planning, but is equally shared by community members that took time out of their schedules to attend the many reassessment workshops and board meetings and to submit comments and input during the reassessment process. This award is an acknowledgement of how well we are able to work together, and we at FORA greatly appreciate the community's participation. It really was a joint effort, and this one award represents all of us working together. But that being said, also Darren standing up right there in the white shirt, if you don't recognize who he is, he has been working tirelessly, and for the post-reassessment committee, and I'll talk about a little later on, he's been a real driving force in bringing diverse elements together on the committee. Hard work, great attitude. We're going to miss him. Our loss will be the LAFCO's gain, and we may have to lock the door before he leaves so he can't leave or whatever else. So again, Darren, thank you very much for your work. Any members of the board have any comments? Yes.
I have unrelated, related to this.
Please.
It's not related
Oh.
to this. No, I'm good.
Okay.
Other than to thank Darren, serving on that PRAC.
We'll be talking about it on the PRAC also
morning.
later on. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any members of the public have any comments? Okay, thank you. Oh, yes.
I also would like to thank him for the work on the reassessment plan. But my concern is that after the work, when does the work begin? When do we see the work that we put in, the people who don't get paid, when do we see what our concerns are and how they're going to be brought forth and what is going to be done? That's what I would like to know. We do the work. This is not the first time. We do all the surveys. We come to the meetings. We get up and talk. We present things. We present it in writing. We put it in words. And we're still waiting to see the results of our labor.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Any other member of the public wishing to address the board? Seeing none, comment period's closed. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have the approval of the May 10th and May 29th board meeting minutes and the Economic and Planning Systems Contract Amendment number 7. Any member of the board wish to pull any items for questions? Seeing none, out to the public. Any member of the public wish to pull any items? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. It's not on there. 7A or 7B. Any other member of the public wishing to pull an item? Okay, back to the board and entertain a motion, please. Okay, the motion was made by Supervisor Potter, and the second was made by Mayor Rubio. Okay, all in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item is new business number 8, Preston Park fiscal year 2013-2014 budget. Michael?
Yes, Chair Edelin, members of the board, Robert Norris will conduct a PowerPoint presentation to give you an outline on the Preston Park budget. Just a reminder to the board members, because I know many of you are, Robert is a relatively new staff member, but Robert has worked in housing projects for pretty much the last 35 years, including a stint as a State of California Department of Housing and Community Development appointed official, as the Chief Operations Officer for the Century Housing Project, as a Chief Staff for the San Diego County Housing Authority, and he continues to serve in housing as a member of the board of the National Coalition for Homeless Veterans.
Good afternoon. The action before you today requests approval of the fiscal year 2013-14 Preston Park operating budget with a 2.4% rent increase and the capital expenditure budget including the life safety expenditures. Next slide, please. There we go. FORA staff recommends the approval of the budget because the budget addresses all of FORA's board policies with respect to sustaining Preston Park as a quality residential living space and to maintain consistency of the rent levels. The capital expenditures are necessary to address, current planned and unplanned safety and health issues. In looking at the Preston Park budget, the primary source of revenue is rents, Section 8 voucher payments, and associated charges to residents, such as late fees. The proposed FY 13-14 budget, option 1, assumes a 2.4% increase for in-place residents using the approved formula of 3% of the lesser of 3% of the Department of Labor's Consumer Price Index. This index is for the San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, all items, all urban consumers, commonly referred to as CPIU, and that number is less than 3% or 2.4% for the period measured. An example is a 2-bedroom. Traditional finish is the average configuration and furnishings of a 2-bedroom unit. You see the in-place rent range. Because of certain configurations and amenities, there's a range across the 2-bedroom units. The average in-place rent is $1,380. The average for in-place persons, meaning people who are continuing on as residents at Preston Park. The difference between that rent and new move-ins, people who will move in this year, is roughly $312 or about 18.3%. The proposed increase for in-place residents in a 2-bedroom is $27 to $39 a month. Similarly, in the 3-bedroom units, again, traditional finish, we have the following rent range depending upon amenities and configuration. The in-place rent for people who are currently living in a 3-bedroom unit is $1,572 a month. The average rent for new move-ins will be $1,997, and the difference between the in-place rents and new move-ins will be $21.28, and the proposed increase for in-place residents will range from $36 to $47 a month. The expenses are in attachment E in the report, including operating expense projections, highlighting hopefully the changes, between the 2012-13 budget, and overall operating expenses proposed, summarized, are basically about 7% higher than the estimated actuals for 2012-13 expenses. Expenses categorized as capital expenses directly impact the long-term value of the property in the community. Okay, I have with me today the representatives from Alliance Management who prepared the management letter, Jill Hammond and Corey Williams, to provide additional in-depth responses to any questions that you may have.
Okay, any questions by board members?
Yes. I see the presentation. Thank you. It says request for board action, but looking at the staff report, there is an option 2 as well that makes reference to, I understand, to no increase in the in-place rent. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in either situation, based on the staff report, there would be an increase, estimated increase in revenue?
Yes.
Okay. And on page 3 of the letter, which is page 15 of the packet, it makes reference to at the very top, right below the little graph, the box there. It says that presently the 2-bedroom average in-place market rent at Preston Park is actually $144 higher than the fair market rate in Monterey County. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that does not include, the $144 does not include the fact that the Preston Park paid for water and trash and sewer, which is estimated by you to be approximately $85, we'll say. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you're looking at approximately, right now, the in-place people are paying, 2 bedrooms are paying approximately $225 more than the fair market rate in Monterey County. Approximately.
If you were to use it as just a comparison for the rents in the table, but what you would have to do is to compare it across the square foot size, which is contained in, we put in the unit configuration on attachment I. You will see that the units that you're talking about in Preston Park are almost 500 square feet larger than the units that are in the comparison in the fair market table. They aggregated it across by price, but they didn't account for the configuration and amenities. Also, we have a pet allowance possibility. You have a gated yard, and you also have individual laundry space within each unit.
Okay, well, you bring up a good point, because if you look at page, I guess it's page 30 of the packet, which is attachment I, in my years of dealing with Abrams and Preston Park, this is the first time where I've seen none of the pages for the surveys of the various pieces of property. By that I mean you make reference to Sun Bay, you make reference to Marina Square, you make reference to Marina del Sol, and to a shadow market. In the past, there have been individual pages. Now, I've gone on the website at FORA, and I could not find them there. So,
individual pages should be attached to the packet.
I'm sorry?
For the market survey, where he's talking about the links.
Okay.
Okay, so if I may just, I see the page immediately prior to that deals with Preston Park, but my recollection is we've always received pages for the other locations as well, so we could compare the amenities on those. Is there a reason why we didn't get them this time? Or at least
The possible reason, and I apologize, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell, if the link did not activate, but because of the size of the market study, based on our prior meetings, we've been leaving that 120-page supplement as available on the web page. If that did not activate, I will check into it for you, but basically, because we wanted to keep the size of the package down, we didn't pull the whole 120-page market study as a part of the packet.
I just went to the agenda packet for today and scanned that, so I didn't see it. So it may be in a different location there. But looking again still at that Exhibit I, it does not appear that in any of the market survey data that you have any information relating to 3 bedrooms. It says in/A until you get to the shadow market. Now, what is the shadow market made up of other than the shadow?
In this particular instance, the shadow market is made up of either other rental communities that are not called out in this particular matrix, or of single-family homes that are being rented to the public within the city of Marina. All of the shadow market is contained within the city of Marina.
So that some of them are actually single-family homes, possibly that are rented?
Correct.
Okay. Looking at, if you have it there, give me a second if I may. Looking at what is labeled as attachment F to item 8A, it appears to be on page 25 of the packet, which I didn't see a number to it. I've met with you before on this out at Preston Park a couple of times. I truly appreciate your attendance and getting me as much information as you could. But I'm looking at this attachment, and it's dated May 29, 2013. And at one of the meetings that I met with you out at Preston Park, I have the same page, quite similar page, excuse me, dated March 14th, 2013. And it is stapled as a draft, okay? But down at the very bottom of the page that's in the packet, it says hold back and reserve summary, and it says physical needs over the term. And if you move to the right, it says physical needs over the term says $8,316,730. 2 months ago, when I met with you, that $8 million figure was $3,500,000.
Correct. And what happened to make that change? If you actually look under the committed projects, that particular $4 million was not added into the formula that you had been looking at on the previous spreadsheet. This includes the $4 million that's already been earmarked for projects that you all approved in December.
Okay. Staying on that same page, if you go down under 2013, 2014, at the bottom you see a black little spot that has a number in it. It's got $52,000, I think, $245 or $75. Okay. On the March one, it has $52,215. I'm not arguing about $60. First of all, the $52,215 is based in part on numbers in that column that are approximately $500,000 lower than the numbers that are on the staff page. Why?
If you're looking at the information that you received in a meeting that we had during April, you should see that there's also some things in that category that were not there. The property assessment in the amount of $74,000 was not there in the information that you're currently looking at. At the same time, the $800,000 for repairs to the buildings were not included in there. So there were some changes from when we last met to the information that you're looking at today.
Okay. And one final question. Could you please explain to me, how do you arrive on the staff report? how do you arrive at the $52,245?
The $52,000 is arrived at by taking the amount of the annual reserve as of a certain date. I believe that we use the reserve amount as of December 31st. We took that amount plus the amount of money that's being added back into the reserves at each quarter, and then take out the expenses that have already been allocated or earmarked. So all of the $4 million of the capital improvements that you approved last year are coming out of that fund, leaving us with roughly $52,000 to start from for the current year.
Okay, I'm sorry, just one more. There's a difference between the document I saw in March, or that's dated March, and the document that's in the staff report of only $60. But there's a difference in the expenses of approximately $500,000. You don't have to answer it, I think you already have. It's just, it creates in my mind a serious question as to whether or not there's any accuracy to these numbers.
And I appreciate that. It definitely is a large difference. What occurred between April and today, or when we presented the information to Mr. Norris, is that we found out that there were other projects within Preston Park that needed to occur. We pushed back projects that we deemed were not as necessary so that we could make room for these other projects that are life safety related.
Yeah. And why is FORA being responsible for the sealing of the coat streets, sealing coat on the streets?
Well, we met back in, I think, March 28th when that issue was initially raised. I went back and looked at the records, and it seems that FORA owns the streets. We have not, there's no evidence that they were ever transferred to the city of Marina, and as such, we are responsible for Surrey coating the streets.
So are you taking out of the reserve to seal the coat your portion of the reserve instead of the portion that may belong to the city of Marina?
That may be a question that
for a later date.
But I think that there are project expenses, and that all revenue that is generated is after all expenses are taken care of.
Thank you. Thank you, Will, very much.
And if I can say one more thing, I'm not certain because I wasn't part of this last year, but that the seal coating of the streets was something that was approved last year, so there must have been some kind of information to go along with that at the time.
Okay, any other questions by members of the board? Yes, Jane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We recently approved a rent increase. I think it was around 2.5%, 3%. Okay. And when did that take effect for the renters?
The rent increase was approved in December of last year. It actually went into effect in February.
Mm-hmm. And then when would this proposed increase go into effect?
If you approve this today, the rent increase would go into effect on August 1st.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a sense for how many units are currently vacant at Preston Park?
Currently, we have three units that are open. 2 of them are leased, and 1 of them is not.
Great. And in the one of these projections of revenue and whatnot, it looks to me as though at the end of this year there's going to be $3.7 or $3.8 million of income net. I mean, after all the expenditures and everything, and then next year $3.9 million. Wouldn't it be possible for FORA and Marina to actually experience less net income? You'd be able to cover the costs of making these improvements, right, without necessarily having to do a rent increase?
Correct. Rent increases, though, is particularly for this property, are extremely important. As you saw on the slideshow, there's a vast difference already between what long-term residents are paying for rent and what new residents are moving into their homes paying, roughly, between $300 and $400 a month. The larger that gap grows, the less it's likely that we're going to keep attracting that level of resident to the community. So even without, having the capital projects go along with it, causing a disparity in that way is eventually going to affect the property. It also affects the properties or other rentals within the city of Marina. Preston Park really does set a lot of the rents for the area. It allows for residents of single-family homes to attract more renters to their properties, as well as the other apartment communities in the area.
Thank you.
Any other questions by members of the board? Yes, Ian.
Robert, I think you answered, I forget what question it was. There was a lot of questions in there, but I think it was the accuracy of the numbers that you guys are presenting. So do you stand by these numbers?
Yes, I do, sir.
And then you raised an interesting point when you last spoke about the disparity between what people are paying that's been in there for a while and new income people. And if it gets too large, isn't that kind of like, what is it, I don't know, in big areas, big metropolitan areas with rate stabilization or something like that, where the rate is so low that the disparity is just not cost effective. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is.
And then there was a question about how many units are open. It's 3, I think you said. Out of how many?
Out of 352 rentable homes.
So you have a list out there waiting.
We don't have a waiting list,
Yeah.
but we definitely do keep lists of people that are interested. We hardly ever have homes that are vacant for more than 15 days.
15 days. Okay, and then my major point was I was very conscious of the rent being so much higher than, I guess, the surrounding areas or whatever that term was. But what are the amenities? And you went over some of the amenities, the extra 500 square feet, the laundry room, and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
But don't we provide, or don't the park provide a type of, location because of the upkeep of the parks, and your neighbor's yard is just as good as your yard because of the property management?
Correct. Preston Park actually does pay to landscape all of the front yards of the homes in Preston Park. We don't pay for the irrigation, but we definitely do pay for the landscaping and maintenance of that. We do go ahead and take care of all of the maintenance inside the homes. We have a 24-hour maintenance service that's on call for any emergencies that residents have. We work 6 days a week, 8 to 6. We have a staff of people that are trained to do the jobs that they're needing to do, in addition to all the amenities inside the homes, which again include a much larger space than what the other comparable homes have. The laundry rooms with space for full-size washers and dryers that the majority of the residents move in for. Additionally, we allow both cats and dogs, which a lot of renters come to us because they need a space for their dog. And then just overall, Preston Park, although the homes and the buildings are older in this particular case than some of the comparables that we have, we really are able to present them in such a manner with the minor changes that we do on unit turn that, really they shine up very well considering.
And thank you for the answer. And I just want to be on the record. I'm not a big supporter of some of the things that the management team does down there, but I wanted to put that on the record. And Robert, I think the last time we talked about this, I asked you guys about the renter's handbook, and things of that nature. What about the update on? I think we were charging them for, a late fee or paying by check or paying by debit card, and there was also that making sure they had the paying online.
Definitely, if you don't mind. Okay, so so what you're referring to really is the online property payment schedule that we have. We do have a service that's called Property Solutions. What it does is it go ahead and it allows residents to pay their rent online. If they pay with their bank account and set up a monthly service, they pay $1 to go ahead and pay their rent online as a convenience fee. If they want to pay one time with their bank account, it's $1.95, and if they wish to pay their rent with a Visa or MasterCard, there's a $40 or it's a $23 fee. Depending on what the rent amount of the home is. There was a tenant's handbook at one time that was in the works at the first years that Alliance took over from Mid-Peninsula Housing. I did recently speak with the president of the Tenants Association regarding that handbook. She was looking for information regarding it just to see if we didn't have to start completely over from where they had left off.
Yes, Gail.
Yes, I just had a couple of follow-up questions. One, when you re-rent, I've gone through this with you. I attended your meeting, and thank you for coming and answering our questions. But I just wanted to clarify that if somebody vacates, a in-place tenant vacates, there is some work done before you increase the rent when you re-rent it. Isn't that correct?
Yes, and it varies. So when you were looking at the rent range, it did show that there were some homes, take the 2 bedrooms in effect, that were renting at $11.46, and there's a range that takes it up to $16.45. The difference between those homes is the majority, not the majority, there are a number of homes where there are long-term residents that do have the homes that they moved into in 1998, 2000, somewhere around there, that don't necessarily have the upgrades that some of these other homes have. By upgrades, really, I'm talking about new paint, new flooring, meaning that they have carpeting in their living room, they have vinyl that looks like wood planks in the areas that you would typically have vinyl. They may or may not have updated lighting. In the homes where we're going and we're actually performing these unit turns and charging the higher rents, we are absolutely making those changes. We're painting the homes, we're putting new flooring in, we're updating the lights. Realistically, we're spending about $5,000 to go ahead and do that. By the end of the year, given the rent increase that we have, we're making well above that amount of money. So the unit turn is paying for itself in a 10 or 9 month period of time. At the same time, we are definitely going into long-term residents' homes and updating them as well. They do not receive a rent increase when that happens.
My other question that I had, as Supervisor Parker has just pointed out, I wasn't on the board at the time in December when there was a 3% rent increase. You referred to your shadow market study. My question is, with the shadow market and other comparables, did that look at the frequency and the amount of any rent increase? When did those occur? I'm startled that you had a 3% and now within 6 months you're back to ask for a 2.4% when we hear about the need for affordable housing in our community, and this increase, the last increase, this increase may displace people. So
And I definitely understand the concern. I understand looking at it from the viewpoint of back-to-back increases. What we're really looking at is it's unfortunate on our end, or for your case, that this property didn't receive its prior rental increase in August of 2012 when it could have. The amount of money that was lost in between August and February was $30,000, $40,000 that the community could have had during that period of time. So understandable for residents, it may come, as a deterrent that we're having two back-to-back. But realistically, if the increase had been approved in June when we had presented it last year, this rent increase would be being presented on time.
my response, and I still want to go back to the question, if you looked at that with the shadow market, is my assumption is that the leaders that city and county and representatives sitting on this board did an evaluation in 2012 and said the rent increase was not warranted based on the circumstances at that time. So to say we're going to put two into effect, one in December and a current one today, because today we need to make up for last time, you don't look at it de novo to decide we needed to go back to 2012, re-look at circumstances. There was a determination. So the decision today, and that's why I'm asking you, is what was the adjustments made in your market analysis, your comparables, and your shadow markets? What were the rent increases that were occurring there? And part of this is, I know as the vacancies happen, you are getting these increases. So it's a balance. I understand that. But this seems a balance to the detriment of our current tenants.
So I do not have information on the comparables and what they were charging last year. I'm certain that we have market surveys that would have that information, but I don't have it with me. Again, Preston Park sets the rents in this community. A lot of the other single-family homeowners and other apartment communities, if we had access to that information, I could actually show you the increase and the succession of when we change our rents to when they change their rents. So, again, it definitely can pose a hardship to some people. Again, this is something that there was no rent increase 2 years before this in Preston Park, and I believe the year before that. So I understand that it seems like it's coming back to back. We're looking at the best interest of the property and the best interest of your organization to try and give you all the information that you can.
Thank you.
Any
also
questions?
it's-
any other questions by board members? Saying none now to the public. Any members of the public have any questions?
Denise Turley, Vice President of the Preston Park and Avon Parks Tenants Association. I have a rather tongue-in-cheek question. So if they get a catch-up rent increase this year, do we get a catch-up rent decrease for the year that y'all raised our rent where the CPI was negative? Number one, we'll get that one out of the way. Okay, so I'm coming with concerns. Number one, my street hasn't had street lights for almost a month, and I'm asking that the powers that be at FORA kind of nudge PG&E along. I understand, boo-hoo, boo-hoo, PG&E inherited insufficient infrastructure. They did not put the wires in conduit, and now the critters have gnawed through the wires, but a month, come on, that's a little, and I mean, you know, you guys don't have to run out there and trench the thing, but maybe you could nudge PG&E a little. And or if they are going to, in fact, put the motion sensors on the houses that are in the budget that we haven't seen, maybe they could start with Barth first because it doesn't have streetlights. Let's see. My experience with being a long-term tenant and updates is I get updates that they want to put into my unit, like new light fixtures, but not updates for things that we've already agreed on need to be done. So the update thing sounds good on paper, but in actual practice, you could ask other people. My experience particularly hasn't been a good experience. Let's see. I'm just trying to really hit the highlights here. I am a little concerned about a note to Alliance. When they print the budget for you guys, could they please turn off the shading, print the budget, and then turn back on the shading? Because if you'll look page after page where there's shading, it obliterates the data and nobody can see it. So they'd have to either give all originals, which would be horrendously expensive, but just simply turning off the shading before printing could really help the readability of the document. Oh, I clicked on the links. They worked. Now, it says here in the document that the reports which were between 40 and 140 pages in length. The first one is 8 pages. The second one is 8 pages.
Ma'am, your time is up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Members of the board, Dan Amadeo. I'm a Marina resident. I want to start off with the positive, then shift into some history on Preston Park. First of all, there's an opportunity for this board as the current legal owner of the property to do some things at Preston Park through the Marina Coast Water District that deal with water conservation, which includes the landscaping and several other things where there are rebates and all kinds of things available to the board, to Alliance, and to the homeowners where you can actually save money and energy both in terms of your costs and the homeowner's costs. And I would encourage you, since you have an expert sitting here in the room that could point you in the right direction, in Director Moore, to consider that as an opportunity as part of both your CIP and as part of your operations and maintenance budget, and informing the residents out there where there are opportunities to actually save themselves and yourselves money. New subject, history of Preston Park. Although staff alluded to it and Alliance alluded to it, and for the benefit of people who weren't here or weren't living in Marina at the time, 3 years ago, there was no rent increase at Preston Park. 2 years ago, there was no rent increase at Preston Park because this board opted out not to do it on the assumption that the property was going to be sold. Last year-ish is when you voted in the 3% increase. In the interim, and my question would be, is we have a as you are all well aware, an ongoing lawsuit between the City of Marina and this board over the ownership of the park. To date, or actually through April of this year, this board has spent $131,000 pursuing that lawsuit. So the $131,000 came from someplace, but I'm not sure where. The City of Marina has spent $260,000 pursuing this same suit. Now, $400,000 seems like a lot of money to pursue quibbling over the ownership of Preston Park. And quite frankly, over time, it will not be an asset. It will become a liability because in the same sense, 3 years ago when the City of Marina, before it was removed from the three-party agreement, not only did not raise rents, they took $100,000 out of the capital improvement fund, which is part of that asset protection some people in this room have alluded to from time to time in other forums, and put $50,000 of it into their general fund and gave you $50,000. So there's a lot more to the history of Preston Park than meets the eye. But understand, $400,000 in legal fees and suits and whatever else you guys are doing, the loss of money and the loss of rent is turning that asset, no matter what the courts decide to do with it, into a liability very rapidly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Levon Stone, FORA Environmental Justice Network. Again, I'll say Preston Park was built for the military, for families to stay and have some kind of affordable rent. And since the military was transitional, those properties were not really built to last the way that regular housing should be built to last. I want to know what the employees, the people who are making these decisions, are being paid, and whether or not they're receiving raises. And I want to know if anybody has done a survey of the income level for the people who live there. Because if you haven't done a survey, this is supposed to be affordable housing, but a few of the housing units are affordable. The rest, that supposedly I've heard they're affordable, and the rest of them are not affordable, and the prices keep going up. Okay? So, if there are no income increases for the people who live there, maybe there are, I don't know. But for the most part, I don't think so. And what I heard from one of the employees that said that level of residence, what does that mean? We want to get rid of folks so we can bring in what we call better folks? That's what it sounded like to me. Okay? And then you have to pay to water your own front lawn as well as pay for the water in your unit. And where are the tenants' bill of rights? We have a quasi-tenants committee, which means nothing. We have met with the vice mayor of Marina several times. Nothing ever changes. It's kind of like what happens here. When it comes to security deposits for the older units, they find some way of keeping your security deposit because you clean as much as possible, but they find some way to keep the money. That's amazing. There's no real oversight. And everyone don't have internet service because that is another fee that has to be paid monthly, even if
10
you
seconds.
could go online to pay your rent. So I really think that,
Ma'am, your time is up.
okay, just a minute. When looking at affordable housing in this county,
Please, ma'am, your time is up.
there's not enough units. There's not enough affordable housing, and the people that are calling the housing affordable it is not really affordable, and that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're trying to keep the train moving down this tracks, and 4-hour meetings and 4.5-hour meetings. We're trying to be a little more efficient here. So next speaker, please.
Thank you. A rent increase after 6 months by a professionally managed firm seems squirrely. A rent increase in February should have contained a forecast of needs and no surprises. The figures were there. Occupancy has been good. These people, the tenants should not be dinged twice in 1 year. Where is it expected that rents always increase every year, and certainly not twice a year? A letter from your landlord is like in the mail, is like a letter from the IRS. It's a very dismaying thing.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other speakers? Okay, back to the board. Michael, you have some comments with regard to the speakers?
I do not have anything to add. The staff recommendation is to proceed with the rent increases recommended by the management consultant.
Okay, back to the board. I entertain a motion.
I make
a motion.
Okay.
Go right ahead, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell was the first one to speak.
Thank you. Make a motion as to option 2, which wasn't really put forth, but approve the fiscal year 2013-14 Preston Park housing operation and capital expenditure budget to include funds from the capital improvement without a rent increase. And if I get a second, I'd like to
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Councilmember Gail Morton. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Frank?
very briefly. The staff report itself points out that the present 2 bedrooms are paying in excess of $147 without including the fact that they pay the water and the sewer and the trash in addition. The survey at best is lacking in that it doesn't provide any kind of documentation relating to 3 bedrooms in the marina area. There's a reference to the shadow market involving single-family dwellings. I just feel that under the circumstances that exist, that a rent increase at this time is simply not appropriate. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion by board members? Yes, Jane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'll just comment that it seems to me that the rents, particularly when you take into account that folks are paying water, which is not always the case in other rental situations. I think the rent is already pretty high. Clearly, the budget shows that with the planned updates and capital repairs and so on, that there will be nearly $4 million left over at the end of the year. And I think that we just need to change our expectation that we may make a little less than that at the end of the year. Nickel and diming the renters doesn't seem to me to be the approach to take. So I'm in support of the motion. Thank you.
Okay, other discussion? Yes, Bill?
I think there was a fairly compelling topic that was brought up on vacancy rate. It's extraordinary to me that out of 352 units that only 1 is not yet leased, 3 are vacant, 2 of them are leased. This has been a persistent story. It absolutely, in my mind, is a clear and compelling confirmation that Preston Park is a real deal, and I can understand the interest of our marina reps in continuing to provide that real deal. From a really philosophical point of view, I would concur that with one of our speakers that for Marina to hold on to this it will create long-term problems for them. It looks very attractive right now. To me, the real answer for this is not for us to be setting rates, but for a professional, privately owned organization to operate those units and respond to the forces of the market. I think it would be remiss for us to nickel and dime against the interests of the other jurisdictions in not taking the opportunity to close the gap. I think, frankly, part of it has been manipulated by Marina on the basis of let's hold off, we're going to make things better and everything will work out, but it has not worked out. I think we really need to go to option 1. I'm against option 2.
Other discussion? Ralph?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Director Camp. As a part of a sponsorship corporation that does own apartment complex in Salinas, about 250 units, this is something we grappled with over time, and we were very reluctant to raise rents based on low income and so on and so on, and we ended up at a tipping point where our properties were not keeping up with the market. They were not being maintained to the level they needed to. They were starting to deteriorate. We decided to change management companies and got into a regular program of updating everything, including the rents. And when you go three and a half years of not raising the rents, you're going to create pressure, and that has to be alleviated. And over the long term, that can be evened out. And the other problem is that this does affect the rest of the rental markets. Marina is trying to attract developers to work out some other housing opportunities, but if there's depressed rents, that will affect the pro formas, and that may prove to be difficult in their long-term goals. So I'd go with the staff recommendation on this one.
Through the chair.
Yeah, yes.
You know, what's really nickel and diming is when we go through this process right here for FORA. FORA's responsibility is not necessarily to provide low-income housing. That's not what we're here for. You know, we're all compassionate, and we don't want to raise the rent. We don't want to put anybody out of their home that's been there a long time. But for us to sit here and say we know what the best price of the rent should be leads to what Director Kemp said. You know, it pushes the professionals out, and then it's a political decision. And so that's what we did a couple of years ago. And then I guess 6 months ago we allowed the rates to go up. But what nickel dimes us is if FORA does not get their 50% of the appropriate amount of income from these rents, we don't have money for building removal. We don't have money for street repair. We don't have money for doing the streets. We don't have money for upkeep of those blighted properties that some of us do own, and which the whole county complains about, and which this board complains about. In a few minutes, we're going to hear a lot of people talk about let's build on blight. Let's build there first, but then we're going to come back around, and FORA is going to say we don't have the money to tear down the building. See, it all goes together. It all goes together. So we had to be careful about that. Because when you read the document of our CPI, everything is contingent on land sales. And some of the money goes together. So every dime that FORA receives, and all we get is 50% of what goes on out there at Preston Park, but what do we do with that 50%? And so every dime, every nickel we have less, that's every blighted building that's going to stay up. FORA already owes or obligated $4 million at least to tear down the World War II Korean-built cement buildings on Phase 2 of Seaside's property. FORA is not coming forward with that $4 million because you know what? They're waiting on land sale proceeds. And we know what people are talking about that, right? We're trying to stop use of land and selling land out there, but then we come back and say, hey, guys, build on your blighted property. So I don't want to see anybody kicked out of their homes or out of their apartments or their homes. But if we get in the business of dictating what the rents are, then why would we? Are we going to raise them next year? I mean, when are we going to feel good enough to raise them? So if someone's willing to talk about that, then we can debate about that. So.
May I?
Okay.
Just a quick answer to that question. We raise the rents when the market conditions justify that. You did that in December. We've done it for the year. The market conditions do not justify another 2.4%.
Okay. Again, we're not having a debate per se. We're discussing the motion from an esoteric, independent viewpoint to bring different ideas up so we can vote. Any other discussion on the motion? Very quickly, Frank.
Yes. maybe we're forgetting the fact that the report itself, the staff report itself, points out the fact that the rent being paid in the 2 bedrooms is already in excess of $200 above the fair market rate. So we're not providing affordable housing or giving cheap rent to anyone based on the standards in the county. Thank you.
Okay, any last discussion? Yes, Dave.
I'll ask council. One thing we do at our city council, and I know others, if anyone lives within 500 feet of an action to be taken by council supervisor, must recuse himself from voting. Conflict of interest.
John?
So, is there a question?
Well, I'm just saying, if anybody here, board members who live within that 500-foot circular, they should recuse themselves.
Is that in fact the case? If that's just a hypothetical question, or is that an actual question?
Well, my question, I guess I'm making a statement, which is I'm asking if that's the, you agree with that? We do this in our cities, and FORA has never been, I've never heard it here. So
That is a requirement of the government code.
all right, I'm just putting a kind of a warning out there. If somebody calls anybody here who votes and live within that 500 foot, could void the vote.
I would agree with that.
Okay, any other last discussion before I call for the vote? Yes, Victoria.
No. I just I got confused by the statement that is both the rent increase is both about profitability and about decreasing the disparity between the rent levels, and also was wondering. It seems like the report just raises more questions for me than it answers, because the CPI index that is actually a San Francisco index also does not seem like it relates necessarily to a local market. The statement about how full the units are seems to me much more in line with how you would decide how rents should go. But I also just, maybe this was, I'm sorry, a question for staff to tell us whether this is more of a disparity increase or if it's more of a profitability increase.
Robert, do you want to answer that very quickly?
It's more of a disparity increase in its absolute sense. We were not going after a profitability target as much as we were going after consistency with FORA practice and adopted formulas for determining when to apply a rental increase, and that has been set in FORA policy since I think about 2009 or 10.
And this proposal is consistent with the FORA policies. The other thing that troubles me is what Ian brought up, is that there's the fact that we are spending time on this, because it seems appears to me to be sort of a micromanaging moment in this meeting, when we actually have whole groups of people who study the market, who are assigned to work on these things. It seems to beg the question of whether this should be something, if the rate increases should be regular and expected and part of policy and maybe a lower level than this one is, or if it should be coming to us sporadically for our professional viewpoint, which I don't feel necessarily I have the same level of expertise as the folks who actually study these things. So I don't know what to make of it, frankly. I just am expressing this, that it's going to be very difficult for me to take this vote.
Okay, Victoria, thank you. Any last discussion? Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve the fiscal year 2013-2014 Preston Park housing, operating, and capital expenditure budgets to include funds for capital improvements without a rent increase. Okay, so the vote is without the rent increase. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Would you raise your hands, please, just so we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion does not pass. Do I have another motion?
I make a motion that we approve as it was originally requested with the 2.4 rent increase.
Okay, Mayor Gunter made the primary motion, and Mayor Rubio made the second. Okay, the motion there, again, is to approve the fiscal year 2013-2014 Preston Park housing operating and capital expenditure budgets to include funds for capital improvements with a 2.4% rent increase. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay, so the motion carries. This will be brought over to our next meeting for the second vote as our SOP is. Thank you very much, everybody. Valuable discussion. Okay, next, old business. We have the fiscal year 2013-2014 capital improvement program for FORA. Jonathan, I believe you're going to be explaining this.
Excuse me, members of the board. I'm here to present the FY 13-14 Capital Improvement Program, and this item is just noted on the agenda as information action. And I'll just run through the slides. It'll be a fairly brief presentation, and we'll take questions. So this is just a summary slide of what is in the Capital Improvement Program. And just for further background, the FORA Capital Improvement Program originated from the Public Facilities Implementation Plan, which was Appendix B to the Base Reuse Plan adopted in 1997. There were two of these obligations on the table that were added. The first one was building removal program. At the bottom, the $6.2 million was added in the 2001-2002 CIP. And then the water augmentation voluntary contribution, the third item from the top, was added in the 2005-2006 capital improvement program. But these obligations have been carried over. The other ones have been included since the base reuse plan was adopted in 1997. The first FORA capital improvement program, I believe, was adopted by the board in 2000 and 2001. So the more detail on each of the elements of the capital improvement program, the transportation and transit item, just noted here changes in the current year. So back in 2009, the board directed Eastside Parkway to be the highest priority after construction of General Jim Moore Boulevard and Eucalyptus Road. And it's just noted here that we're expecting it to come out of the ESCA program and CEQA to be completed and funding to be secured. And this is all anticipated in 2014-15 and 2015-16, and that's included in the Table 2 of the Capital Improvement Program for funding this Eastside Parkway project in those 2 years. And then for current priority in this table, in Table 2 has been given to Davis Road Bridge south of Blanco. FORA has a reimbursement agreement with the county, and those funds are being used to make a local grant match. And then project South Boundary Road is 1 year ahead of Eastside Parkway, and the rationale behind that is that it's the most likely project because it's relatively small in funding requirements that we could possibly go for and obtain a grant for in the future. So that's the changes in the transportation elements. This table is just Table 2. It shows the different elements within the transportation and transit. Included here are regional transportation facilities, off-site facilities, on-site facilities, and then transit obligations. And you'll note from a comment at the last board meeting, there is transit funding here of $90,000 per year in the transit category. Under water augmentation, the FORA CIP has included a CEQA mitigation from the base reuse plan and is currently at $23.4 million. And then there was a board-approved voluntary contribution in 2005-2006, and that's currently at $21.6 million. And just noted that when that voluntary contribution was made, it was during a rate study time of Marina Coast Water District, where they look at what their rates need to be as far as capacity charges when they charge for hookups of new development. And instead of doing a rental, an increase to that capacity charge, FORA adopted this voluntary contribution in 2005, 2006. And MCWD is currently in the process of doing another rate study, which is expected in September of this year. For habitat management, 25% of FORA's development fee is going into funding the HCP endowments. It's currently estimated to be a cost of $39 million based on a payout rate of 4.5%. We've collected $5.6 million to date, so there's $33.4 million that remains to be collected, and there's also a $19.2 million contingency, and that's the difference between a 3% payout rate versus a 4.5% payout rate. FORA is currently working out what the end payout rate is going to be, depending on discussions with the wildlife agencies, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And in the end, the HCP endowment has to produce approximately $1.7 million per year to fund habitat management. Under other costs and contingencies, caretaker costs are currently targeted at $660,000 a year. And that's approximately $132,000 per jurisdiction out of the 5 jurisdictions. And should those costs be demonstrated, FORA can reimburse jurisdictions for caretaker costs of their properties, provided we have the revenues in place. There's additional CIP costs of $16.9 million, and those are roughly, if there are cost overruns for unknown conditions or environmental conditions on CIP projects. Again, the habitat management endowment, which was mentioned earlier, of $19.2 million, and additional utilities and storm drainage. This includes $3.5 million, and when FORA removed the outfalls on Monterey Bay, we set up a stormwater detention basin on State Parks property, so that's just a placeholder. We don't know what the actual costs will be in the future, but of restoring that detention basin once all the development on Fort Ord is managing their stormwater on site. And then just noted here is other cost debt service. So there's $8.2 million for the loan principal and interest for General Jim Moore Boulevard and other advances to the CFD program. Under building removal, just noted that there are 2 MOAs in place, one with Monterey County, one with City of Marina. The one with Monterey County is fulfilled with East Garrison, so the building removal there of $2.1 million is complete. On the City of Marina, FORA has met its cash obligation of $22 million, and there's just remaining about $19 million in land sale credits that FORA will apply in the future. And then so as far as cash obligations go, FORA's remaining building removal is limited to Marina Stockade of $2.2 million and City of Seaside Surplus 2 of $4 million. And as far as recommendations, so the staff report had a recommendation for board adoption of the FY13-14 Capital Improvement Program. The Administrative Committee has met on the 19th of this week, so Wednesday this week, and they made a motion to the board to recommend postponing consideration of this FY13-14 FORA CIP until August 9th board meeting. And the rationale behind that was to allow additional time for review. They've identified 4 items that require additional study, including post-FORA implications, CIP funding and project placement, building removal credits, and the CIP narrative. So with that, we'll open it to questions.
Michael, you had a comment?
Yes, Chair Edelin, we had a very open and frank conversation with the Administrative Committee the other day about the Capital Improvement Program, and the Administrative Committee was very encouraging in their desire to look at the post-FORA implications. I think that was the principal issue that members of the Administrative Committee wanted to look at. We are attempting to look at the questions of whether all of the development can occur within FORA's lifetime, or if there needs to be some more logical distribution of when projects would likely occur. And the implications of extending that beyond FORA's life are important and need to be reflected back to the members of the FORA board. And the fact that the administrative committee is willing to wrestle with that and what the implications are for the CIP, I think the board should welcome, and I think their recommendation that the board postpone actions on this for a 30-day period or whatever makes a lot of sense. And so staff recommend that board consider that in their deliberations today.
Thank you very much. Any questions by board members? Yes, Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the question would be, what is the impact on FORA operations if we don't have an approved CIP until our next board meeting?
The items in the CIP are not immediate expenditures on July 1. There's certainly a number of the FORA budget itself. The operating budget is a different question because, as the auditors reported last year, we need to have an approved budget with which to measure our expenditures against beginning each fiscal year. The capital improvement program budget does inform the operating budget, but in terms of having an actual approved capital improvement program budget, it would not change the way we would look at our expenditure for several months in terms of capital expenditures.
Any other questions? Yes, Jane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple just arising from the presentation. In the discussion under water augmentation, I didn't quite understand when we're talking about the FORA board approved voluntary contribution to buy down the connection fees that was originally $21,700,000 ish, and then the bullet point under that says that in 0506 in the adopted CIP, the board approved a $17 million contribution to do the same thing. Is that a decrease from the original 22.7, or is that in addition, or how does that all work?
So in 2005, 2006, it was 17 million, but in today's dollars, since it's been indexed, it's at 21.6.
Thank you. That makes sense. And then I had another question relating to the building removal, and this is one of those things where there are words that are used that probably make a lot of sense, but I'm not quite sure how to make sense of them. So you mentioned, for instance, with the city of Marina, that there's been $46 million in building removal costs, and there are $19 million of land sale credit. What does that mean? Does that mean that FORA is going to eventually get $19 million back for the expenditure that FORA made?
So in the MOA regarding building removal, the land sale price was set at 48 million. So FORA's value out of that is 24 million. So it was a deduct from the 46. So what remained was 22 million for FORA to come up with from other land sale projects outside of the dunes. And so we've met that 22 million cash obligation. The dunes has the shopping center open, the Chomp facility open, and some additional land sales in the future. But the city of Marina has only transferred approximately 5 million worth of the 24 million in the dunes project area. So FORA has applied those $5 million of credit, but we have 19 million left to apply.
So I think what you're saying is that that would not be money that is coming back to FORA.
That's right.
But that's sort of between Marina and the dunes at this point.
Right. Instead of taking cash, we just take building removal off the obligation off of the checklist within the project.
Great. Thank you. As it relates to the post-FORA discussion, I think that is a very interesting and important one. I see that the Administration Committee was suggesting the August meeting, which is actually 2 meetings from now. If that's when those issues are going to come back, what I would ask is at our July meeting that there be sort of a discussion with the full board about how all that conversation is going. What are the options that you're looking at? What are the ramifications? So that we don't repeat the formula fee thing that all happened out of our sight and no thorough discussion of what all the options and consequences were. And, you know, as it relates to some of the other issues as well. so that we don't get hit with one whole fait accompli that we have to try to digest in such a short time. I wonder, there was some mention in the narrative that not all items in the CIP are mitigation measures, and I wondered if it's just possible, as we list the things on the CIP, to make a note of what are mitigation measures, just so that we don't have to try to remember. It would be helpful. I'm sure staff knows it by heart. Then I was interested that on page 5 of the document, which is page 41 of our packet, as we start to describe the obligatory program of projects, in the middle of that introductory paragraph, it says land sale and lease is crossed out, so it's land sale proceeds are earmarked to fund the building removal program. And I guess I was wondering about, were lease proceeds formerly able to be applied to that, or are we just cleaning up something that was never the case, or what's the reasoning behind the and lease removal?
So at this point, FORA has very few areas where we collect lease revenue. Preston Park is the major remaining property where we receive lease revenue, and we're using the majority of those lease proceeds to pay down the Preston Park loan of $19 million that the board approved previously. So there's really, at this point, very little lease proceeds that can be applied to building removal or obligations other than the loan itself.
So you're just being practical, that they could have been used previously, but there's not really enough to speak of now?
Yeah.
Right? And then one of the things that I had asked about, and I know my staff has been having conversations with the FORA staff about the whole priority for the 8th Street project. There's a proposal now that's coming forward to the county to open the Intergarrison Road, and there had been conversation previously that wouldn't happen until 8th Street was open, so that the traffic that might be coming down Intergarrison Road from, say, East Garrison would have somewhere to go without running right through the middle of CSUMB. Not that they'd want to now with all those traffic calming measures, but it just seems to me that it's that the logic behind really trying to make sure that we're really creating the ability for traffic to flow would indicate that we should move 8th Street up in the queue. And I know there's stuff about Marina being a lead agency and a memorandum of agreement, and I have to go back and look at that memorandum of agreement, but it didn't seem to me that just because Marina is a lead agency that FORA couldn't put this on the CIP.
Okay, Ralph's next.
Thank you, Chair. Just as to the process of, postponing this decision and discussion to August, if we were to handle this today, would it preclude doing any of those studies or finding out any of those discussions regarding post-FORA obligations? I think those discussions are going to be going on for quite some time. Number one, we know what the base-wide obligations are. We know that FORA is going to come under some sort of LAFCO jurisdiction to determine who's going to pay what and how, whether there's going to be a JPA or some other form of base-wide obligation organization to take care of all that. So I just wonder how they're going to wrap all that up in 2 months so that we can get this finished. It seems like a really big lift, and we can work with this CIP budget and still continue that conversation.
Jonathan?
So I think the concerns from the committee, they in particular wanted to look in more detail on each of the 4 items. I can't speak to whether or not they're going to have a solution for each one of them, but they may have some concrete recommendations for the board at the end of the process.
Yeah, also, Dan Dawson, the committee chair, talked to me earlier today, and they really haven't made a recommendation to our board yet, and he asked that he be given time to get their stuff together. There's a chance they can have it done by July. They will meet before July. So we may get their recommendation. We might be able to act on it in July, but August would be at the worst possible case. Yeah.
I'll follow up to that then. If they can expedite it, that'd be great. I just don't want to get to August and hear that, well, we're not quite ready yet. Can we postpone again? If they're not, moving very quickly, then I'm going to be putting pressure that we move on the CIP.
We'll get the cattle prods out. Okay. Other board member comments? Yes, Ian,
I'll be quick,
please.
Chair. I agree also that I don't know why we want to put this off. Their discussion is not going to determine anything about the CIP, talking about what we're going to do as FORA closed down. 6 years is a very short amount of time. But if we're going to talk about that, it's not going to be settled within these next 2 months, because the thing is, if we want to go to some type of JPA, I can tell you now, all the entities that want to participate is going to have to put some skin in the game. We're not going to continue to have the land use jurisdictions be, sitting between people that don't have any skin in the game, allowing them to dictate what we do with our skin. And so if you want to play, then you're going to put something in there, and your taxpayers are going to have to be responsible for some of this building removal, this HCP and everything else, because that's where the money FORA gets from. 50% of that money FORA gets is for these programs. And nobody wants to use this land for anything, and then at the end of the day, it's going to be the land use jurisdiction stuck holding the bag, my taxpayers. So right now, you guys don't have any skin in the game, but once we go to LAFCO, it's going to be on. So we can either get it done in the next 6 years, or you can tell your taxpayers, then if you want me at the table saying no growth, then we need to put some skin in the game and help tear down some of this blight and things of that nature. So I want to add that to the conversation that the administration committee is having, because it's not just simply continue on with what we've been doing. Keep kicking the ball down the trail.
Will do. Other board member comments? Yes.
Just real quickly, I'd like to thank FORA staff for being responsive to our comments from last board meeting and at the admin committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Your comments are appreciated. Debbie, did you have?
I had a couple of comments. I also wanted to thank the folks that put funding for the Highway 68 improvements in next fiscal year. Some of those improvements are already constructed. Some of them are going to be constructed in the next year or so. And the Davis Road improvements as well are moving forward. So thank you for putting those in there. I think that's probably the first regional project that's gotten funded, the Highway 68. But we are looking at the timing on the 156 project and would hope that that might move up. And with regards to the issue of the post-FORA period and our countywide traffic impact fee, we could certainly toss the notion that the regional projects and the off-site projects could easily be integrated either into the TAMC regional fee, and then the on-site projects are mostly done, but could possibly be integrated into the citywide fees, and that might be part of an updated traffic study, which we will be doing in 5 years. Now, that's just the transportation part, but that's something for people to think about, and we'll certainly discuss it with the administrative committee, even though it doesn't have to be decided right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Seeing none out to the public, any comments by member of the public? Yes, ma'am.
Levon Stone. I am requesting a copy of each of the projects that's being discussed, the budget for these projects, and what the cost is. Because when this base closed, we talked about the impacted community and where the money was going to come from for these projects. And there was supposed to be a plan not to pass these costs on to the community. And all I've heard today is that everything that's being done, the money has to come from the people that have been already severely impacted. And everybody's patting each other on the back, good job. But how can it be a good job when the community itself has to take on the cost? Now, most of the decisions are being made by men I see around the table. There are a lot of people in the community who are men who don't have the salaries and the structure and the houses that a lot of you have, and they want to take care of their families. They want to have a roof over their head and be able to pay their bills and have their kids to go to good schools and all of that. And somebody needs to take account of that. They need to take account of what's being said here, and really, as the representatives at this table, I'm not on the FORA board, but as the representatives at this table, it is the job of this board to look at the impact that's being passed on to the people, the local community, and what is really happening and not happening to them.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other members of the public?
Hi, thank you. Kersan Giles, Building Industry Association of the Bay Area. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I'm passing out a comment letter that the BIA prepared. Attached to it is a peer review by DPFG on the proposed CIP. The BIA contracted with the Development Planning and Financing Group to conduct this peer review to better understand the proposed changes and their potential policy impacts. The key concerns identified in DPFG's memo are the absorption change. This is a big change for this program that you're considering. It's an arbitrary reduction of 50% of the jurisdictional build-out projections, and it results in half of the CIP still to be funded after FORA has ended in 2020. But it doesn't identify a successor agency or a funding source for the remaining CIP programs and the mitigations for environmental that are left. This is a big change from any of the CIPs you've approved in the past. And it's a big change from recent conversations that we just had to extend FORA legislatively, where the worst case scenario was 20% of the base would be left after 2020. It also references cost indexing. The CIP is not using an index that's consistent with the recently adopted implementation agreement. This was something that came up just in your Preston Park discussion as well. It's not using local numbers. The Habitat Conservation Plan, the draft CIP before you today for consideration, does not fully fund the HCP endowment due to the post-2020 funding uncertainty. The water augmentation issues. The Water District is about to release an updated nexus analysis and capital improvement program, and it seems prudent to include those revisions prior to finalizing this document. Surplus fund balance. The draft CIP before you shows a surplus of approximately $25 million without identifying intended use or FORA's authority to collect such a surplus. Additional CIP development detail. Many of the improvements lack updated detail and estimated costs and funding sources, specifically the storm drainage, building removal, property management, and the caretaker costs. And the land sale revenue. The land sale revenue tables on Table 3 do not match the same data located on Table 5 for year 2014-2015, and the data needs to be reconciled. The proposed changes are a huge departure from your prior CRPs, and they raise a lot of important questions. If the board is confident, if this board is confident that 50% of this plan will not be built before 2020, why hasn't there been an action plan included to fund the CEQA mitigations post-FORA? How do we build 50% of a hotel? The reductions don't reconcile with your recent permit activity. How does the CIP even become valid if 50% of this funding program has not been identified? And does this expose the base reuse plan to additional environmental litigation because 50% of the mitigations in the proposed CIP program remain unfunded? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Why is East Side Parkway a priority? This is a road to nowhere. The elephant in the room is that it greases the skids for Monterey Downs. Where is the CEQA taking into account its impact on Fort Ord National Monument? And as far as Garrison Road goes, opening that up is just going to dump traffic onto unprepared 8th Street, which is crumbling, narrow, takes it past the Marine Equestrian Center. not a good idea.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other members of the public wishing to address the board? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion. Yes,
Mr. Chair, I'd
Supervisor
move
Potter.
continuance of this item until the July meeting.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Potter and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Frank O'Connell to continue this item until our July meeting. Discussion on the motion, yes, Bill?
I'd actually like to put on the table a consideration of a different approach on this. I looked at the items the administrative committee would like to review, and I thought, there's absolutely merit in every one of those. But I also have this reflex that says every time we ask for more data, more clarity, more understanding about uncertain things in the future, and we can't act until we know all the answers, I also get this reaction that says, whoa, we're never going to know all the answers about the future. So what do you do about it? Budgets, in my mind, are documents that have to be adjusted as it goes along. So the other thought that I'd like to put on the table, particularly in the environment that we're seeing here in FORA, is that we actually vote to approve this capital improvement plan as presented. It looked to me like a good workmanlike document, that the administrative committee take this for further exploration and recommend amendments that come back as amendments rather than starting from scratch. Our track record lately has been that it takes at least 2 votes to get something done, and this at least will stage us to do something in July if it appears we have the opportunity and the need to do that. The core issue that struck me was what's the build-out rate, the absorption rate, and it's clear that not everything's going to get done by the end of the FORA period. We don't know what the percentage is. We kind of thrashed through what it means for impact fees, and it turns out I think we decided that it doesn't affect impact fees all that much in terms of what the assumptions are. And the rest of it seems to me to be a good working basis for moving forward. So I'd just like to throw that thought out. See if anybody else thinks it might make some sense.
Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, I could just point out that it's going to go to July one way or the other. I mean, we can discuss this ad nauseum, but I'm going to vote against it, or I'm going to vote for this motion. So one way or the other, by our rules, we're going to have to hear it again in July.
Okay.
Okay. We have, any other discussion on the motion? That kind of summarized and shortened things.
I think you're going to hear it in September, if I might suggest.
Yes.
Where we're really headed.
I'm calling the question.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I think Director Kim made a good point. We need to be, we need, the people that want to move things forward need to be a little bit smart about what we're doing. So if we're going to vote for it anyway, what the adjustments are, we're going to take the amendments when they come up. But if we hear it a month from now, then it could be delayed for another 30 days. So that may not be the right way today, but I think he makes a good point about wasting time because we had to take 2 votes. So that's just on the table, and we'll move forward.
Yeah, I guess I'm not conflicted, but Bill, I agree with you 1,000% on delays and delay. In this case, the chair of the admin committee specifically asked for them to be able to do their job, provide input to this board so we can do our job, and I've got to respect the request of the chair of the admin committee and the work the admin committee is doing.
So if I might just ask that if I vote to support continuing, in September when we're voting for the perhaps second or third time trying to get this done, do I get I told you so rights?
Yes, you do. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'm going to call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, board. I really appreciate it. Every now and then the sun comes up and so forth. Okay, next item of business, 9B, the FORA fiscal year 2013-14 preliminary budget considering adoption. Michael?
Yes, Chair Edel and members of the board, Ivana Bednarik will primarily do this report, but I wanted to introduce it. Last month, I provided the board with a summary of the budget that had been presented to the Finance Committee over the course of the last several months. And before you have what we call a bubble chart or a history of how we handle the budgets in the review process. This particular budget shows on this also about the CIP, so that it's clearly understood that the CIP informs pieces of the operating budget. The yellow on the chart shows the dates in which various committees saw the CIP. The gray on the chart, because I'm colorblind, it looks gray to me, shows when the operating budget is actually seen by the Finance Committee, the Executive Committee, how staff prepares it, when the Administrative Committee and the Board see the drafts of the operating budget. So for reference purposes, this tells you how many times it's been through different forms and adjustments. There are a couple of items that will be changed from last month. Ivana will go through the items that are different from what you saw last month.
Good afternoon, board members and members of the public. Displayed is the preliminary annual operating or total overall for our budget for fiscal year 13-14. This same chart is also included in your board packets as attachment A. I believe it's page 75, if you want to follow it there, because this is fairly small, because it contains a lot of information. This chart was already included in the budget presented to the board in May. However, there were still a few items, budget items that needed to be completed for the June presentation, and those are shaded or highlighted in the fiscal year 13-14 column. As you can see, the CIP budget items still needed to be developed and completed so that they could be included in this overall budget. And also the executive committee still needed to review proposed adjustments in salaries and benefits. The executive committee met on June 5th and is recommending including in the budget, so the new number that you see by the salaries and benefit item, cannot see that far, 2.1 million includes those recommended adjustments, and they include salary step advances, 2.5% cost of living adjustment, and increase in the health benefits. These benefits are more itemized, and they also provide, or the chart provides, a fiscal impact of those benefits. It's an attachment C in the board packet. It's included, or you will find it on, I believe, page 77. The budget that you see in front of you, it's a complete overall budget, and it includes all revenues and all expenditures that are anticipated for fiscal year 13-14. And also, I would like to go back to the CIP budget. It was important to wait for the CIP budget or the CIP program to be prepared. So both documents, the FORA annual budget and the CIP program budget, report the same amounts. On previous years, these were different, and that created a lot of confusions in past years. As you can see at the end, there should be quite substantial funding balance or combined fund balance at the end of the fiscal year of $16 million. But of course, that is all depending on whether the projected revenues will be collected. Okay. As Executive Officer Hulemart explained, the budget was reviewed by the Finance Committee in April. During 2 meetings, the Finance Committee made their recommendation, and the Executive Committee made their recommendations as well. And both committees are recommending approval of the budget as presented.
That completes your presentation. Okay. Any questions by members of our board? Yes.
Thank you. on page 72, as well as in the breakdown, it makes reference to 1.3 million property tax payments. Has any of have any of those funds been received?
Yes. We, so far, for the current fiscal year, 12-13 received 1.21 from the county.
Have any of those funds been passed out to the member jurisdictions, such as marinas? One makes reference to 10%.
No, they have not, because according to the formulaic approach, which was approved by the board in May, and we have the expert on this here, but the 10% distribution to jurisdictions will happen after the tax property payment that FORA received from the county exceeds the 11-12 collections, and those were 1.3 million. So when these property taxes will exceed 1.3 million threshold, that excess will be distributed.
Do you have any idea of when that anticipated date will come?
I'm hoping that will happen next fiscal year, 13-14.
So right now, it's your position. There's no
Right now,
money to be distributed at all.
Right now, we were below that threshold.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Checks in the mail. Any other questions by board members?
One question here.
Yes, Tom.
In March of 2007, FORA got the ESCA award, federal grant of $99 million. How has that grant been paid out? Was a check for $99 million written to FORA at that point in time and put in a bank account somewhere, or is it paid out as we have gone along?
Actually, the attachment D that specifies the ESCA funding provides this information. In reality, FORA received $97.7 million because the Army took credit for making these payments earlier than what was anticipated in the grant agreement. And we received 3 payments, as specified here, $40 million in fiscal year 06-07, $30 million 07-08, and the remaining $27.7 in 08-09.
So we've received the entire grant amount at this point.
So we received the entire grant amount. FORA is holding what you see on attachment D, like 3.5 million balance. That's what FORA is holding in a separate money market account. We have to, as you recall, we have to return all interest earned on these funds back to the federal government, and this is being reported on our books as a deferred revenue, and it's applied again expenditures as they occur.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Yes, Debbie.
I had a question about the CIP budget. The revenues show the full projected revenues, but I can't tell if the expenditures, the revenues are, I think it's 11.7 million, and the expenditures for the CIP show is, I think it's 3.7 million. And I just wanted to know if the expenditures show the full amount in the proposed CIP, and if so, why is it so much less than the expected revenues?
The budget shows the entire 11 million that is included in the CIP, but if you can take a look at the CIP budget, which we don't have displayed here, but there is about 8.2 million in debt service in the CIP document under other costs, and 7.6 million repayment of the loan or loaned funds from the general fund by the CFD fees back to the general fund. So it's like 7.6 million. It's a transfer, inter-fund transfer, and you will see it here on the operating budget included in the general fund reserve balance. That 10 million balance in the reserve fund includes that transfer of 7 million from the CFD fund. So if you combine the 4 million and 7 million, you will get to the 11 million.
So
in the CIP budget.
why wouldn't the $7 million be shown as a expense?
Because
Or-
it's not expense, it's repayment between two funds. It could be, it's shown expense on one fund and a transfer in another fund.
Okay. Any other questions by board members? Yes.
How many funds do we have?
Right now we have 5, and one is going to be closed very fairly. Used to have 18, but now we are down to 5. It's a general fund, a CFD, a capital improvement fund, land sales fund, ESCA must be kept separately, and we used to have the debt service fund, which serviced the premium repayment for the pollution legal liability insurance, and that been paid off. We are just waiting for one payment to come, so that could be closed. But basically we have general, CFD, land sales, and ESCA right now.
Would we contact you if we wanted copies of the fund balances on those?
Of course.
Thank you.
And the fund balances and the itemization by fund is reported on FORA financial statements, and those are available online.
You forgot Jerry's beer fund also. That's the most important one.
Yeah.
Any other questions by board members? Saying no questions by board members. Out to the public. Any questions by members of the public?
Hello, again, Chrisanne Giles, Executive Director of the Building Industry Association of the Bay Area. I appreciate the opportunity to comment on the preliminary budget. Our interest in the preliminary budget is to understand how to track the CFD and development fees that have been collected and allocated. What you guys are doing with staff salaries, we really have no interest in that discussion at all. But it's unclear from the budget spreadsheets as they were presented what's happening in the budgets. The BIA hired DPFG to review the preliminary budget in order to better understand the accounting models that are used to manage development fees and program revenues, and that memo is attached to my cover letter that I've just passed out to all of you to provide additional detail to the comments that I'll present this evening. Through discussions with DPFG, we know that budgets of this kind should generally be structured consistently with FORA's financial accounting to allow this board to oversee the policy direction and provide some public transparency to the accounting. The key comments and concerns that we have with the preliminary budget as it stands before you today is it's not consistent with the annual audited financial statements. It commingles revenues and expenses between 5 independent funds, and it does not distinguish expense recognition for CIP programs. From that high-level review, it appears that FORA is balancing your general fund with money transfers from its special funds, and it's unclear if that history is to subsidize funds that have not been identified, or if those transfers of money into the general fund or to correct past loans from the general fund for infrastructure improvements that may have been done prior to the collection of development fees. You can't follow the train of fund balancing from the public perspective. Likewise, it's difficult to discern how grant funds were appropriated and to what extent those funds were earmarked for CIP infrastructure as opposed to supplementing general fund expenditures. And it's impossible for the public to track the budget items because several of the funding sources are commingled. If a structural deficit in the general budget does exist, the board should identify cost reductions or alternative measures for revenue sources to offset those costs instead of borrowing from the developer fee fund. Should the FORA board decide to adopt the preliminary budget today, the BIA would respectfully ask that the board bring back the budget within 60 or 90 days to address some of these high-level questions defined in DPFG's attached memo. I understand that there was a history of sort of streamlining the way that this data was presented, but with the streamlining that has occurred, it makes it impossible to track the funds. Undergoing this process now will inform future planning decisions by this board, and it will certainly help you
10
identify
seconds.
a JPA structure post-FORA while providing transparent records of your previous funding decisions and the funding decisions you will choose to make in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next member of the public. Any other members? Ivana, would you like to answer the
Yes,
previous
yes,
questions?
I would. First of all, I would like to say we are not commingling funds. We are combining funds on the presentation chart. And, to track properly each funding source, we have accounting system set up. It's a fund accounting. Each account is its own entity, and all transfers in between are very clear and easy to track. And our financial statements provide all the information that was mentioned here, reporting by each fund. Of course, we have that information. We always had that information. Preparing budget, I prepare the budget by funds, and there's a lot of other documents or supporting spreadsheets that this chart feeds from, And in previous years, if you take a look at how the budgets were presented to the FORA board in 2003, 4, 5, we had those slides with information by fund. But in 2007-8, the Finance Committee recommended just present this one, as it was at that time not needed and too confusing and too much information provided for the budget presentation, and the board approved this presentation. But we can always provide to the board the supporting documentation that is used to produce this chart.
So if any organization, individual needs additional information, financial information in the other format, they can ask you and you provide it to them.
And we already asked people who were interested to come and meet with us and request the information, and we would provide it.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions by members of the public? I believe there's not. Back to the board. I entertain a motion.
I'd move approval of preliminary budget.
Okay, a motion by...
And as a supplement to that, I'd suggest that if there's a desire to return to the old method of reporting, that could be discussed at the admin committee and direction could be given.
The executive committee, right? Or admin.
If I may, it's
or
the charge of finance
okay.
committee.
Fine.
Okay, we have the motion by Supervisor Potter, the second by Mayor Rubio. Okay, discussion on second?
Yeah, I think it just might be sufficient instead of to put it in the presentation, which, it gets pretty long-winded. But if we were provided with a document that explains all that, would be sufficient.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we are rounding the stretch into the home stretch right now. Next is the 9C base reuse plan, post reassessment follow-up. I'd like to start this off very quickly. Basically, before we start this discussion, I would like to thank the folks that worked on the PRAC, the Post Reassessment Review Committee, Supervisor Jane Parker, Council Member Gail Morton, Director Tom Moore, Council Member Victoria Beach, Mayor Pro Tem Ian Oglesby, and Director Andre Lewis. This group has spent about 15 hours coming in early in the morning from 9 to 12 or in the afternoon from 1 until 5. You can note the names I've noted are a very diverse group of individuals with diverse viewpoints, with different priorities and everything. But during this time, under Scott McCreary and Darren McBain, they've sort of come together and did some real hard work on some very contentious issues, and have achieved basically consensus on what you're going to see today. So I'd just like to thank all those members for all the hard work. And getting up and being here at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning is not the easiest thing. And with our budget limit on coffee, sometimes it makes it a little difficult. Darren, take it away.
Thank you, Chairman Edelin, and thank you also very much for the kind words earlier in the agenda. I didn't really see that coming, and I guess I was a little bit caught off guard, but it really means a lot to me. And I just wanted to mention that when I came to work here for FORA, I really had no idea that I was going to be having the opportunity to work with such a talented, knowledgeable, dedicated, caring group of people, both at the staff level, at the board level, but also on the part of the community as well, who are so giving of their time and energy and their expertise. And I feel very fortunate to have worked with this group. It's been a tremendous opportunity in that regard, and I know that I'm really going to miss it for sure. Although It's true. It is very true, Michael. No chuckling. I'm glad that I'll be able to work with so many of you, and our paths will cross in my new role at LAFCO in the very near future and on an ongoing basis. I should note for the record that we have a revised report before you today for this item. We circulated it on Tuesday of this week, and hopefully that is before everybody, and there's some extra copies out there on the table. So this is item 9C, and we have a revised board report. Members of the board, as you know, the Post Reassessment Advisory Committee, or PRAC, was formed in March of this year with the primary goal of providing a recommendation to the FORA board toward selecting a set of base reuse plan policy action items to focus on and prioritize over the next fiscal year. This work is selecting from the policy topics coming out of the 2012 reassessment process and report, and those topics are summarized in attachment A to your report this evening. PRAC has met 5 times between early April and Monday of this week, and has engaged in what has been a very collaborative and deliberative dialogue process to develop a list of priority action items agreeable really to all members who attended the most recent meetings as the final recommendation was coming together this week. And just in summary, this has been the outcome has been a very broad-based, consensus-driven product with buy-in from all committee members who were present this week and in the last couple of meetings. That's the report from the PRAC, and that's our information item. Turning to the committee's recommendation, which is summarized in letter A, capital letter A, under discussion. What the committee is recommending is that, knowing what we now know about current conditions and opportunities coming out of the reassessment process, there would be great benefit to re-engaging with the broader community in a colloquium-type forum to develop new perspectives and outlooks on achieving implementation of the base reuse plan, with primary focus on items 1 through 4 in your report. I won't belabor it too much, but those are summarized as complete base-wide regional urban design guidelines, complete base-wide blight removal, emphasize the national monument designation in all aspects of base reuse plan implementation, and prepare a strategic economic revitalization plan. With the central idea being that these are the key subject areas that would produce the most community benefit, especially with new solutions and ideas being brought forward into the mix as part of a re-engagement process to be held in the near future. Co-hosting this process, this colloquium process, with CSUMB, as has been discussed previously with Dr. Ochoa, President Ochoa from CSUMB, is very much a key component of the concept of this colloquium process, both to engage that sector, that very significant sector of the community, and to broaden the input and perspective being brought into the larger discussion of base reuse plan implementation. Initial planning conversations have occurred between Executive Officer Hulamard and Dr. Ochoa and his staff towards that goal of coordinating a co-hosting effort for this colloquium. And that effort will be ongoing in the near future to allow for adequate time for a couple of things related to the colloquium, both the overall format and the timing, whether this would be several events spaced out over a longer period of time, or maybe something more like a 1.5 day or 2 day event back to back. Those are the kinds of things that we want to look at, in addition to the details such as precise format of the discussion, the topics, breakout groups, speakers, and those kinds of things. So that will be continuing to be developed in the very near future between FORA staff and CSUMB. Looking at recommendation B coming from the PRAC's discussion, apologize a little bit on the wording there. This supplemental or revised memo came together very quickly in the last couple of days. The wording for B should probably be something more akin to PRAC to coordinate with FORA staff and CSUMB representatives to develop the colloquium program. But the key point is that the PRAC would like to be involved in development of the format and the program for this community event. And of course, there would be great value that would come from bringing in the committee members' expertise and energy into that effort. So therefore, accordingly, staff recommends that the board specifically endorse the PRAC's continued inclusion in the colloquium planning process, simply because that was not foreseen at the time that the committee was established. So it would be a good thing to document going forward. That concludes my summary of the PRAC's recommendation to date. My apologies to committee members if I've missed any key highlights of the committee discussion so far, and obviously I won't be offended if you'd like to express them a little more eloquently than I've been able to today. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Any questions by members of the board? Yes, Ralph?
Thank you, Darren, and thank you for all your work, and this is a good work product. In revising the item, I noticed that the little footnote that was important in the first rendition, the one that says, although the short-term visioning was used in the minutes and some discussion, most of the committee's discussion of a future community engagement process centered on exploring new ways to achieve the vision expressed in the BRP in light of current circumstances, as opposed to revisiting the BRP's vision. I think that's a relevant footnote to make sure is included.
Sure. Actually, if I may, the committee members specifically requested that we, I think just for purposes of streamlining the report, in the discussion just this past Monday of this week at PRAC meeting number 5, committee members requested that we did not include that footnote in the revised version of the report. I think it was perhaps fairly well understood by committee members that that was the intention of that language, but perhaps less clear to people who have not been privy to all that discussion at the committee level.
Right. I think it's probably well understood by the committee and many of the board members, but not so sure about the public.
Thank you. Any other comments by members of the board? Questions? Yes, Ian.
I want to thank the committee for coming together and doing such a great job. I wasn't a part of too many of the meetings, but I'm a little apprehensive. You know, I support the committee and I support you empowering the committee to talk about these issues, but talking about the revisiting, talking about taking out the vision back to the community and seeing what we could talk about, and the first thing you do is take away what we've done before. You know, the vision's been set for 15 years, and now we're talking about revisiting. And for me, I'm just going to be real. All this is another opportunity to talk about using this land for ecotourism and recreation. And if you ain't on board on that, then those guys don't even want to talk to you about anything. And so this is talking about putting the National Monument as a catalyst. Now the National Monument is a catalyst. When you look at the revisiting plan, the 3 E's turn into education, environmental. Well, I'm going to read the whole thing for you. Prepare a strategic economic revitalization plan that incorporates access, marketing, design, or other features to support the educational 1E, the environmental 2E, then it's research, recreational, and other economic and job creation opportunities on the former Fort Ord. So the economic opportunity is now 1 within 5. Now research gets its own little tidbit there. And so for me, you know, the board can go the way the board wants to go. But for me, why can't economic development get its rightful place at the table? What? Why not? Yeah. And so that's my question. And so if we want to go and ask Dr. Ochoa to lead us in the revisiting process, if we're not talking about the revisiting process of CSUMB giving back some of that 1,200 acres so we can build on that blighted area, then taking the 30% that's left and saying let's reserve more of that for recreational use, then why are we even here? Why is the other side even here? So, you know, I don't know why the little caveat was mentioned or removed, but for me it's kind of unfair. It's totally unfair. So those are my comments. I appreciate my other committee members because I know they are sincere in what they're trying to do, and they did a lot of work to get this thing done. But I'm talking about as a whole board. Why do we keep supplementing economic opportunities? And if the only economic opportunities we're talking about is recreational opportunities and what little bit of money the land use jurisdictions may get from that,
then let's just skip all this conversation and just go straight to it. So I appreciate the committee, appreciate you, Chair, and thank you.
Yeah, Ian, just let me answer a couple of things there. Number one, when we're talking about revisioning, to me, the term may be a little vague. To me, it's more of an implementation of some of the ideas we came down on. So we're not looking at revisiting all these things we've been working on for the last year or so. We're looking at, now that we have these ideas and these priorities, how do we go ahead and implement those for the good of our communities? And the other thing, now, again, maybe I'm missing something, but number 4, it says basically prepare a strategic economic revitalization plan. And that's about as strong as we could come up with in trying to revitalize the economic base so that all the communities benefit from them. Now, it says incorporates, of course, access, marketing, design, and all those other things, but the bottom line is we're looking at coming up with a strong economic revitalization plan along with a national monument, implementing that, blight removal, which is key to Seaside and Marina to a large extent, and then a regional urban design guideline. So we thought, these are all, and it's not listed in order of priority per se. Those are just areas we want to focus on. And we weren't looking, if anything, we're trying to really push the economy to a large extent. So your point's well taken, but hopefully as time goes on, you'll see we're really going to be pushing this. So, Gail, did you want to say?
I did just want to defend the footnote that Darren put here, was because it doesn't talk about creating a new vision. The footnote expresses specifically that the committee was looking at the future community engagement process centered on exploring new ways to achieve the vision expressed in the base reuse plan in light of the current circumstances, as opposed to revisiting the base reuse plan's vision. So I think that the footnote might have been misunderstood, or is that the committee was not looking at this colloquium as being an opportunity for everybody to come in and start again. It was looking at, we have a vision, we have a base reuse plan, we've identified what the committee looked at as a whole of 4 strategies that needed to be attacked sooner, preferably in this year, because these have been stumbling blocks in getting this base reuse plan. We're trying, the reassessment was to identify, which is what EMC did, was identify where we haven't completed the base reuse plan. This committee was saying, okay, if we tackle some of these items first, we think so many of these other programs and policies and things that need to be implemented to complete the base reuse plan will fall into place. So it was a great discussion among multiple viewpoints, multiple jurisdictions, county representation, city representation of jurisdictions that have land, that they're talking about their own land, jurisdictions that only benefit from what we do with the land that have lands on former Fort Ord. And I compliment everybody that's worked on that, including Ian, but I really want it heard that we're not changing the vision of the base reuse plan. We're trying to achieve the vision of the base reuse plan. Thank you.
Victoria.
Well, I think, again, it's obvious that Mayor Rubio was right, that there's room for misunderstanding here if our own committee is misunderstanding what we were doing. The first paragraph of number A says this is about BRP implementation. I'm repeating what Gail just said, but it is very clear to us. And in fact, if you look at all 4 of these, there's not a single, all 4 of these are derived from the base reuse plan. We just went to the base reuse plan and said, what are the ones that are in our way of moving forward on this, except for the designation, which is news. So again, this is entirely derived from looking within the document. And then what we wanted, the vision for the colloquium, was to bring experts and the community together to help us implement the base reuse plan and to just start moving forward, to find those people that can help us figure out how to remove the blight in ways that are new and creative. Find us people who can help us finish the urban design guidelines, which is a mandate of the base reuse plan. So there's nothing here actually that's new. It's just our picking and choosing and saying these seem to be the pieces that, as Gail said, if we can get these pieces put together, the rest seem more likely to fall into place.
Thank you. Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that goes to the point I made about the footnote is not included in the revised staff report. So people can draw whatever conclusions they want, and you couple that with, language is important, semantics are important, and economic development does go down to number 4. Prepare a strategic economic revitalization plan that incorporates access, marketing, design, and other features to support the educational, environmental, research, recreational. See, before it used to be educational, environmental, economic development. Those were the 3 key elements. Now, as council member, as Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby pointed out, now it's moved further down the list. So boards that come back later, well, we may not be here when they start reading this. They're going to look at, well, they don't see a footnote, and they see that economic development is down number 4 and number 5 or 6 in that paragraph. All of a sudden, it's being diluted, and I can understand how some people might say, well, maybe it's not so important. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes,
I'd just
Jane.
like to say that I think the representatives from Seaside are raising some good points. We wrestled with so much wordsmithing and heaven knows what that we probably got a little bit too down into the weeds. I don't know about the other members of the committee, but I think we can go back and recraft the language to make it clearer what we intended and what you're raising as issues. I think what we were trying to do in general as a group was to say, if you look at all the recommendations in Category 4, there are like 39 of them, and how do we weed through those or cull through those and pick and find some criteria to move forward, because we know that the way that we thought things were going to unfold 15 years ago hasn't happened. So let's get into today's reality and what are some criteria we could use to get us started. And one really was, what are some concepts on this list of 39 where we're likely to have a fairly broad agreement that they're important. So there probably were more than 4 or 5 that fit that category. But then we also thought, let's look at what we could actually accomplish in the nearer term. And so we picked some of the things that seemed both concrete and doable, and as Director Beach said, that could actually lay the groundwork for all that we want to have happen, in the midterm and the longer term future. So I hope the board thinks that was a good direction. We thought it made a lot of sense and discussed it up, down, and sideways, and did a lot of thinking and talking and trying to wordsmith. And I think the comments, as far as I'm concerned, are welcome, and we can definitely incorporate that into the language so that people are comfortable.
Victoria.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I meant to say before that I find the comments very valid, actually, about the language, and we did wordsmith a lot. And in fact, all the comments that were made were things that crossed my mind, thought, oh, maybe we should, and there's so much wordsmithing, I just kind of stopped at one point. However, I will say that I would be prepared to move today to adopt this recommendation as a board with 3 changes. One is to remove the numbering of the, something I thought of before but didn't mention, remove the numbering of these things, and if you like, Mayor Rubio or whoever, put the first one, the 4th one on the top. I don't think anybody cares, because the intent was that they would be equal. Number 2, to cross out research and recreational. That was actually never really discussed by the board, by the group. It was just wording that came before us, and we thought it was okay. And 3rd, add back the footnote. So I would be prepared to, again, move that we adopt this with those 3 revisions that have been suggested by other people, basically.
Let's hold that motion. Any other board member comments thus far? I want to go out to the public and have their public comment.
Let me just finish my comments.
Okay.
Again, I acknowledge the hard work of the board, and it's not really about wordsmithing to me.
It's about mindset. So I don't challenge their mindset. I'm talking about the board, the whole board. And one of these policies that's going to come before us is policies on land use adjacent to the national monument. Right? It's only Monterey and Delray Oaks that has land next to the monument. So if you want this board to tell you how to use your land next to the monument, that's fine. But Seaside lands border BLM. So I don't know where the board, the FORA board, is going to tell you what you should build on your land next to the monument. And that's what I'm saying. So once we even entertain that as a policy, and then we decide one way or the other, that's where I'm uncomfortable at. So it's not challenging their sincerity or wordsmithing. It's just the concept of the board as a whole going down that road. That's all. It's not the committee. So the committee is doing wonderful work.
Understand. Let's go out to the public and get some public comment before we go for the final motion second, so we can have some input from the public. Any member of the public wish to address this issue?
I would note that the entire sentence on number 4 is prepare a strategic economic revitalization plan that incorporates access, marketing, design, or other features to support the educational, environmental, research, recreational, and other economic and job creation opportunities on the former Fort Ord. I think that list of 4 items was simply an attempt to expand and illustrate the meaning of the economic revitalization, is to provide examples, not to dilute the idea of economic development or that as a priority. And in fairness to the wordsmithing, I think that a problem is being seen where there really isn't one.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comment?
Members of the board, Dan Amadeo, I want to share Mayor Rubio's concerns. I want to share Mayor Pro Tem Ogilvy's concern, and I want to thank the motioner for trying to alleviate those concerns. However, I'm not concerned about what the current composition of this board is, or maybe in the future, but I am concerned about the groups out in the public who love to parse words and take words and twist them. So no matter what your intent is, someone's going to walk in here sooner or later and say, I don't think you meant that. Or they'll say it to a different group. So I am very sensitive to the verbiage in these things. And let me give you a couple examples of why you need to make sure your verbiage is clear and concise, so it's not subject to interpretation and reinterpretation, as we've seen with so many activities within the county lately, whether it be, I won't even name them, just you pick one. You probably have an example. Why do we distinct between outdoor recreational tourism and ecotourism? I don't even know what ecotourism is. Why don't we just stick with outdoor recreation and whatever forms that comes in? If that includes ecotourism, fine. I don't know what ecotourism means. I mean, is that a special subset of tourists that we don't know about? Is that a new person, a new breed we're not familiar with? I'm concerned particularly with on page 83 of your packet and 84, where it just talks about the Fort Ord National Monument. And it certainly should be a catalyst to help promote some of our needed economic recovery, but I guarantee you it's not the thing that's going to replace the 7th Infantry Division in Fort Ord, and anyone who believes that's probably very much naive. That is not the major economic catalyst for this area. But I think it was Councilmember Oldsman's policy for land use adjacent to the National Monument. I think that's... you're going to have a base reuse plan. I thought that would be the policy. So you're going to have a subset policy strictly for parcels that are adjacent to or connected somehow to the National Monument, or what people want to connect to the National Monument. Integrated Trails Plan has always been part of that, but part of this recommendation says, see if I can find the verbiage here. I can't find it right now, but it talks specifically about open space again. Trail networks and open space. Now you've combined them. What the heck does that mean? We have plenty of open space, so what are we looking for when we define
30
that?
seconds, 30 seconds.
That's fine, thank you. You know, if anyone wants to walk from the beach to any part of the BLM land, I'll meet them at Supervisor Parker's office, and I'll take them in any direction they want to go, and you can get to BLM land on foot. So these trail networks, what's a trail? What's the trail serve? Is it pedestrians,
10
bicycles,
seconds.
horses? I think you got to be real careful with this because it'll come back and bite you by somebody later on if you're not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public wishing to address the board?
Good evening. You get 2 Amadeos for the price of 1 today. I also have problems with the language. Some of it I don't. But I am concerned about a suggestion for financing for removal of blight. FORA is going to sunset in the not-too-distant future, and I think financing is not the best recommendation. Certainly, the debt would continue whether FORA was still here. You actually are, by financing blight, you could, in essence, be saying FORA has to continue on for 30 years until the debt is paid off. I don't think LAFCO is going to assume the debt, or any new agency is going to want to assume the debt. The emphasis on the national monument, I have concerns about that language. The national monument is important to the overall recovery of the base, yes, but it is not the only thing that's important. And to make that the focus, which number 3 does make that the focus, I think that's inappropriate. I think actually economic recovery, no matter what catalyst you use, is the primary objective of FORA, and that doesn't seem to be listed in any strong order. Number 4, prepare a strategic economic vitalization plan. I thought we already had one through the base reuse plan, but if you're going to use this, certainly the very first thing should be economic recovery. It shouldn't be at the end. It should be at the beginning. We've got education. We've opened CSUMB. That was the first thing we did. We've got the Monterey College of Law. We've got an MPC campus. Education, important as it is, it's no longer first on the list because much of it's been accomplished. Environment, obviously, much of that has been accomplished with the National Monument designation. But what we haven't accomplished is economic recovery. And I think the focus of what we do going forward needs to be economic recovery. I'm also concerned, as Mayor Pro Tem Ian Eaglesby is concerned, that we are taking away the rights of the jurisdictions to determine what works best in their communities. And I would
30
like
seconds.
to see, thank you, I would like to see that, that we leave in the hands of local legislators, our local city councils, and the County of Monterey for their property, the right to develop that land as what will meet their needs. Yes, it's regional.
10 seconds.
But it's also local. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. The name is Eric Peterson, and I'd just like to comment on the National Monument for a second. The importance of the Port Ord National Monument cannot be underestimated, and a comparison can be drawn with an older recreational entity run by Bureau of Land Management, Red Rock Canyon in southern Nevada. If you go to Red Rock Canyon, it is more developed, it's been there longer, and the parking lot is full of cars and other vehicles with license plates from other states. People go there, they spend money. It's an economic gold mine in its own little way, and that is the potential we've got for Fort Ord. If we have people coming there, they'll be spending money. I expect sooner or later the Toro Cafe is going to get overwhelmed. And that's what we need. We don't need to talk about economic development that's been talked about for decades and isn't happening. We've got something that'll work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ron Cheshire. The significance of the National Monument can't be estimated. You know, we keep hearing people say that it's going to bring great significance and wealth to this area. I made several suggestions that try and be figured out. All of the naysayers want us to estimate what type of economic development will be brought by certain businesses and such. but they can't lay a dollar amount on what this national monument is supposedly going to bring us. Monterey County is full of national lands, and we have a lot of ecotourism, but we just have a lot of tourism in general. And I don't know if any more land is going to bring us any more prosperity. Now, I agree with the fact that the local jurisdictions ought to be able to determine their destiny within the forward reuse plan. And we don't want to change that or alter it to where you have to answer to someone else, or this notion of determining what adjacent parcels, what could be there, or whatever. You will be determining then from whatever the national monument to that ocean, because everything's adjacent. Someone earlier stated you have to watch out for what people might think you have said. We have a lot of experience with that in the building trades, because there seems to be a term called prevailing wages. It's quite misunderstood, is because people don't want to understand it. They want to remain ignorant, is the nice word. They just want to go to court and say they didn't know. So anyway, thank you very much. I'm 45 minutes late for my 3 grandchildren's birthdays today. I hope one makes it to his next birthday. He was cornered by a rattlesnake up there at the RCI housing, or the Pinnacle housing development. So wildlife's doing rather
30
well
seconds.
in the area. And I will thank you very much for taking into consideration and moving on the building trades recommendation to have a session which is much needed, but not only because of the misunderstanding, but just the fact that there's so
10
many
seconds.
people out there don't care. And the workers and the businesses of this community do care. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment?
My name is Jack Stewart. I started coming to these board meetings about a year and a half ago. At first I found them very entertaining, but then I found out there was real serious business going on here. And I found during this time frame that somehow we had evolved the base reuse plan from the 3 E's to 1 E, the environment. Economy, gone. You have to remember, we have people in this community who are unemployed, substantial unemployment in the cities of Seaside and in the city of Salinas and down in South County. This affects the whole area. You have to have jobs. The National Monument is going to project a few jobs, and there's going to be some spending. However, the main crust of our recovery of Fort Ord is to replace that 7th Infantry Division, and it was a well thought out plan then. The only thing that has not allowed that to happen has been the harsh economy that we've been going through for the past 10 years, roughly. That's the only drawback. Once our economy gets going, we'll be fine. But we have to bring in new business, not new ecosystems. We have to have lines of communications that are going to accommodate those new businesses. Getting our people from Salinas to the peninsula and the peninsula to Salinas area to work by new lines of communications. We're going to have to house our poor, house our homeless, take care of the working class people of this community. This plan does not do that. I'm sorry. This plan does simply not do that. It's utopia. I'm sorry. When I went to college, I started college when I was 39 years old because I just graduated from the United States Army. And I was educated after that.
30 seconds.
Thank you. And I will say one thing. You got to think outside the box. And you got to remember where your roots came from. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Okay, now that we've had public comment, Councilwoman Victoria Beach was going to make a motion. Would you please restate your motion, please?
Yes, I wanted to move that we receive and accept the recommendations of the PRAC with 3 modifications. First, that we remove the numbering system on the items under letter A. And if Mayor Rubio would prefer, or anyone else, move the last one to the top. Number 2, cross out the words research recreational. And number 3, add back the footnote that was taken out.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Sorry. Second, but are you okay with a friendly amendment? And
Yes.
item 2 is to change the word financing to funding.
Right, that was the intention of the word. That's
Okay.
fine.
Just to make clear.
Okay, friendly amendment there. So we have a motion and a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, Ralph.
Yeah, I was prepared to second that before we had the public comment. It's a good thing we have public comment. It seems to me that there needs to be more work done on this, specifically on the area of the FORA National Monument, some of the far-reaching impacts of some of the language here. Also, the revised language, I appreciate the attempts by Director Beach. I think that's a good start, but I think we need to take it back, incorporate all the comments we've heard today, and take another stab at it. Because right now it's just it's going to be piecemeal, and I think we need to take a really good another look at this with some changes. So I won't be voting for this.
Other board comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Okay, with the noes, please raise your hand so we know the number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the ayes, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess the noes have it. Do I have an alternate motion?
I move we can continue this item and work on it some more and bring it back.
Okay, the motion on the floor is from Mayor Rubio is to continue the item until next month and bring it back.
Mr. Chair, clarifying question.
Yes.
Do you want to have staff incorporate the proposed changes in the failed motion, or do you want to just bring this exact thing back to work on next time?
Well, I think we need to incorporate the changes, but I think we need to take another look at the ramifications of several of these categories. One being Category 4 of the FORA National Monument, aesthetics, prioritization of design guidelines. That could have serious impacts on every single city and how we move forward in our land use decisions in our own designs. The economic development and jobs. A while back, I asked a question about ecotourism and what it meant. And I asked someone to please quantify for me how many jobs would be involved in ecotourism. Is it 5? Is it 50? Is it 500? Because we're putting a lot of emphasis on something that we don't know what it's going to yield. So there's several items here that need to be revisited, I think.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second.
I have a
Second
question.
motion and second on the floor. Yes, Victoria?
I just have a question. So I hope everyone understands that these were topics for discussion for an educational colloquium, and that it might be difficult to resolve the questions that we're asking today without having that educational and in community and expertise at that colloquium. It might. I'm at a loss to know exactly, should the pre-RAC meet again, how to revise topics for a colloquium that would be attractive to the rest of the board. And so I'm wondering if we could have just a moment of a process discussion to determine how that would get incorporated into the PRAC's process.
Right, and I understand that, but when you look at the categories, it's not really clearly identified that these are topics of discussion. It says topics / policies. So
are you
which
looking
ones?
at the, I'm sorry, are you looking at
I'm
the...
looking at page 82 and 83.
Are you looking at the non-revised? I think that actually a lot of the public comments were also on the non-revised, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're looking at the discussion, the revised portion that was given out.
Right.
Okay.
So I think, unless I'm mistaken, that the part that came with the original packet is actually just excerpted from the base reuse plan and is not part of the PRAC work at all, actually.
Well, if it came from the base reuse plan, the original plan didn't have the national monument, so.
It came from the reassessment report.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's lifted directly from the reassessment report.
So the only thing that the PRAC worked on, we didn't work on the reassessment, just to be clear, we didn't work on the reassessment plan at all. We just worked on exactly what's on this, basically the front of this one page.
Right, that revised sheet.
And that's the only thing that's before you
Okay,
now.
if I can, let me just, we're going back and forth, and I tend to agree with the PRAC after spending 15 hours of wordsmithing and going through about 71 different categories and coming down with this. It's sort of back up in the air, and we're not going to resolve this right now. We're running out of time. I suggest what we do is we go ahead, we've got a motion, second on the floor. We'll vote on that. If it passes, I'll get with the PRAC members and find out where they want to go, and we'll also get with the rest of the members of the board and find out where the major issues are prior to meeting with the PRAC, so we can take a look at what the heartburn is or the issues are and try and come up with a better document that everybody will accept. But after spending 15 hours of wordsmithing and everything else, we'll do our best to go back to the drawing board and meet everybody's needs. Okay? So, any other discussion on that?
Quick,
Yes.
Chair. As far as I'm concerned about the colloquium, I don't understand how we would go forward with that anyway before discussion with the board. And
We can't.
I appreciate the committee's thought about it, but when we talk about taking that conversations to outside individuals or the community as a whole, when we're still debating the policies.
We're not going to do that
No,
yet.
I'm just saying that's a big determinant that we just need to reevaluate that.
We're going to take some baby steps. The baby steps are we're going to come up with a revised document everybody can agree on or the majority can agree on, and then we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at how we want that colloquium to go with C, issue, and B. Okay? And we'll also bring back, it'd be interesting, we've got Category 1. We've spent how many hours on Category 1 with our recommendations there. That should be very interesting when we bring back to the board. So bring your sleeping bags and your pillows the next time around. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? I'm sorry? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed?
No.
Okay, noes, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, ayes have it. We'll bring it back. And we'll be getting with the board members and the PRAC here in the not-too-distant future. Thank you. Okay, it's now past 5:30, slightly at 6 o'clock. I'll need a motion to extend. We've got the public comment period. We need to have public comment here. That's very important for the Brown Act and all. Can I have a motion, please?
I move extension of the meeting for 5 minutes after public comments.
5 minutes after public
comment.
comment. So, okay, do I have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Next thing we have is public comment period. Any member of the public may address the board on any item not on the agenda. You've got 3 minutes. Please state your name or organization, if you would, for the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon, FORA board members. My name is Summer, and I am a student at Marina High School. I first spoke here almost 2 years ago as a new freshman I have just completed my sophomore year, and the things I spoke about last time are still the same. My school is surrounded by a dump. There are old buildings filled with broken windows, graffiti, and garbage. There's a chain link fence and a ripped up green tarp along all the streets. I'm sure it must cost a lot of money, but are these buildings ever going to be taken down? I thought the buildings were going to be torn down and new things were going to be put up, like houses and stores and restaurants. Also, I live in Preston Park, and there is no bike path on Imjin Parkway near my house. I can't ride my bike from my house to school unless I want to ride on the side of the road with cars flying past me. Are we going to get a bike lane soon? I wonder if the close-off roads in the Marina Heights area could be open to bicyclists. Then at least I could get from my house to the part of Imjin Parkway that does have a bike lane. And I pass by that coming soon sign for Marina Heights every day on my way to school. It seems really old. Do you know if it's going to come down soon? Thank you for letting me speak tonight, and I really hope you can do something about these things.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Any other member of the public wishing to address the board? If you're going to be speaking, please move forward so we can save some time in between travel time from the back of the room to the front of the room. Thank you.
Good afternoon, FORA board members. My name's Gabriella, and I also go to school at Marina High. I feel the same way Summer does about the old buildings and trash around our school. People just go out there and dump all the old furniture and trash, and it looks horrible, and I hope it will be cleaned up soon. What I would like to ask about today is when are you going to build fun things for people my age to do? If I want to go to some movies or to the mall or bowling, I have to go to Monterey or Salinas. The same with places to eat like In-N-Out or Johnny Rockets. I thought Marina was supposed to get a movie theater soon. I think I saw a sign that said it would be coming this summer. It seems like the people who talk about saving the oak trees always get what they want, and it stops everyone from getting the things that they want. Young people in Marina want fun things to do close to home, so we don't have to find a ride out to Monterey, and I think that is just as important as what anyone else wants. We really appreciate you listening to us and trying to make some of these changes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next member.
Good evening. My name is Eric Peterson, and it sounds like we could have had a special public comment section just on bike lanes, but I'm going to talk about East Garrison. East Garrison, I realize, is no longer FORA, but we need to learn from our mistakes. Their home is being sold there already. A couple things. The bike lanes out there have numerous sections which are illegal under California law. The bike route there also doesn't meet California requirements, and I don't know, there could be other issues that I'm not aware of. The deal on the bike lane, there's numerous sections that are 3.5 feet wide. Yes, I measured them. Caltrans requires them to be at least 4 feet wide in California. This is simple. This is no-brainer stuff. The bike route, it's short, but it's not posted right. Here again, according to Caltrans requirements. And these are safety issues, and they're very clearly in the Caltrans Highway Design Manual. The Caltrans Highway Design Manual is clear, concise, and safety-oriented. Debbie left, but TMC could have been a source of information to get this done correctly. Also, there are freelance traffic engineers. I know one who lives in Seaside, nice and convenient. His name is Bob Chanteau, and I can get you contact information. These are not only safety, but you get into liability and issues too. Just everybody knows about lawsuits here. You spent time in special session talking about it. There are other projects that are also done contrary to California law. General Jim Moore Boulevard, 2nd Avenue, part of Reservation Road, Imjin Parkway, and other places. As I say, this gets into liability issues. It gets into safety issues. The East Garrison Street should be rebuilt. You know, good luck on that. At a minimum, they should remove the markings. One thing, I've been on Salinas Traffic and Transportation Commission for almost 15 years now, and I've heard numerous complaints from numerous people. And there's two things about those complaints that are pretty consistent. One is they're usually right. And the second thing is it's usually about something that was built 50 years ago and things have changed. We really should not be building new streets in a dangerous manner. We shouldn't be building new streets in an obviously dangerous manner because Caltrans has the requirements. My request here is that in the future, developers who get
30
projects
seconds.
be required to be competent. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public wishing to address the board? Seeing none, public comment period is closed. Executive officer report. Michael?
Yes, Chair Edelin, members of the board, the executive officer's report has a number of information items, and you've already reported on the federal legislative mission, so I will not add anything in that regard. However, Ivana Bednarik, our controller, has indicated to me that because of a combination of funds and the fact that in this particular year we had 2 ADC conferences in a 12-month period rather than only one, we wound up with exceeding the amount of expenses in our travel budget. And Yvonne indicates that we need an increase of $8,000 in the budget. We have the funding elsewhere in the budget, but it needs to come from other funds. So the specific request, Ivana, is to approve an increase in the line item for budget authority by $8,000.
That's on page 155 of 179 of your packet. Any questions by members of the board? Saying none out to the public. Any questions by members of the public? Okay, back to the board. Entertain a motion, please.
I move we approve the additional $8,000 in the
Okay,
travel
Mayor
fund.
Kampf is the primary motion maker, and who's the second? Supervisor Salinas. Okay, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. John, go ahead and give your report.
Yes. Today, while we were meeting, the Judge Kingsley heard the motion that Mr. Bogan made for a issuance of a writ, a peremptory writ. Mr. Bogan's motion was denied, so the Fort Ord Access Alliance initiative is going to go forward. And obviously, I wasn't in attendance, but the judge did consider it for. There was argument for about 2 hours at least. She had a busy calendar. I think it was on a bit and off a bit. But the bottom line is she denied the motion for issuance of a peremptory writ, and so the effect of that is the initiative will go forward.
Okay, that being that, any items from members? Okay, just one last time, Darren McBain, we appreciate all the work you've done on FORA. Wish you good luck and Godspeed when you go to LAFCO. Don't forget us. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you next meeting.